people.
Fuck Israel. So, the first story is Robert Inlakesh, Indie Media Award honoree, Robert Inlakesh. Go to indiemediaawards.substack.com. There is a page dedicated to each honoree with all of their links. And we really worked hard to try to vet this list of people that we have trusted to be consistent over the years. Nobody gets it right all the time, but these people we trust the most, and we rely on to tell us the story unfiltered without a corporate spin. So this is Robert Inlakesh, and he's doing this for Palestine Chronicle. He's written for a couple other publications too, but he talks about 22 months of complicity, why the media suddenly changed its mind on Gaza. Pretty interesting. All right, that he says that the mask has fallen off of Western leadership and their corporate media machinery. They aren't allowed to suddenly pretend as if they weren't complicit in this genocide. After 22 months of complicity and silence, Western news outlets appear to have had an epiphany about the live stream genocide in the Gaza Strip. Yet, given that this change has coincided with a similar rhetoric shift from Western leadership, it's not been received the way that they had hoped and should be. You may have noticed a near 180-degree pivot in the way that Western media outlets have been reporting on Israel's actions in the Gaza Strip. Let me make this a little bigger. Yet, given that this change has coincided with a similar rhetoric shift from, okay, I get that one. It's just months ago, the BBC, Sky News, CNN, the Associated Press, and even popular commentators like Piers Morgan, who's owned by Rupert Murdoch anyway, its Talk TV network or channel, were all framing the genocide as Israel's defensive war against Hamas. Well, now that same media machine is challenging Israeli officials, standing up to Zionist propaganda, and in many cases calling out Tel Aviv's policies for what they are, in line with what human rights groups and UN reports have been saying for months, years now. On Thursday, it's really weird, coordinated, BBC, Associated Press, AFP, and Reuters even released a joint statement expressing their concern for their journalist colleagues in the Gaza Strip. Reef, how many stories have we done about Gaza journalists being murdered on this show and on INN News?
Too many.
Like dozens, it feels like.
Too many.
Stating that the Gazan journalists, and they're not Gazan journalists, they're Palestinian journalists that were trapped in Gaza, are now facing the same dire circumstances that they are now, that those they are covering. Yeah. Well, some have heaped praise upon these media outlets and personalities for suddenly standing up. Many have seen right through it, as have we. So in light of this, it's important to explain why this is, in fact, all performative and frankly, downright insulting. To begin with, the sudden shift appears to be justified across the Western mainstream media spectrum on the basis of Israel's 3-month-long total blockade of Gaza and recent statements of senior officials, particularly Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich. Bezalel, sorry. He's a douchebag. Absolute, like that dude belongs in The Hague, in prison right now. In order to assess whether this acted as the straw that broke the camel's back and suddenly caused an awakening, we have to look at how true it is that the situation on the ground in Gaza even changed so dramatically, because it really hadn't. All right, 147 days, I believe, we're up to right now, according to Paula ISL's graphic that she shared this morning on Facebook. On the point about the statements coming from prominent members of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Milikowski's government, it is blatantly false that there has been any kind of major rhetoric shift in recent months. In fact, one only needs to go back to South Africa's submission to the ICJ in late December of 23 to get a full list of genocidal statements. Again, that was 18 or 19 months ago. When the ICJ genocide case hearings took place in January of 24, And I remember that Reef and Colin were one of the few news shows that covered those in detail. One of the most convincing arguments presented by South Africa's legal team was the fact that everyone, from Israeli prime minister, president, defense minister, to media personalities, had made genocidal remarks, which then were interpreted by soldiers on the ground as orders to commit a genocide. On October 9th, 2023, 2 days after October 7th, then Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant asserted that his military was fighting, quote, human animals, unquote, and that, quote, I have ordered a complete siege on the Gaza Strip. There will be no electricity, no food, no fuel. Everything is closed, unquote. This leads us to the next major reason cited for the alleged collective epiphany across corporate media spectrum, which is the Israeli policy of starvation. Yes, Israel did impose a complete siege of Gaza for over 80 days, yet during that period, which came after Israel decided to arbitrarily scrap its ceasefire agreement, the media shift did not yet occur. The number of people starving to death in the Gaza Strip has undoubtedly reached levels not seen before, although it should be noted that this is not actually the period in time when the largest number of overall daily deaths have occurred. That's also insane. Nor is it true that the starvation policy is something new. So now to counter this, some may push back by claiming that this time it's clearly as a result of a much more deliberate approach. Well, yet this would in fact ignore the fact that in April of 2024, Israel's top rights group, B'Tselem, released a report entitled Manufacturing Famine, in which they accuse Israel of deliberately implementing policies aimed at inflicting famine, which did actually begin to unfold before the Israelis were ultimately forced to allow some aid to enter Gaza. Thanks, guys. So then we come to these statements appealing to Israel to allow aid into Gaza and expressions of concern for journalists. Let's address the statements of concern, such as the BBC, AP, AFP, and Reuters statements. Again, let's reflect on the idea that Gaza's journalists are now facing the same dire circumstances as those they are covering, as if they hadn't been before?
Hadn't been. Right.
This would have been true.
As well as the doctors and the aid workers and.
Right. This would have been true if it had been published 22 months. And the hostages. Oh, yeah, the hostages.
Right.
Right?
Yep. Don't forget them.
This would have been true if it had been published 22 months ago, and only now are they suffering the circumstances of those they cover? No. They've been suffering exactly as the rest of the population has since the beginning of the genocide. These journalists don't need statements of concern. They deserve an apology from BBC, Reuters, Associated Press, and AFP for the atrocious reports they put out throughout the genocide that have worked in many cases to whitewash and justify Israel's actions. And I'll never forget the press conference we put where Abu Bakr Abed spoke for 5 minutes eloquently berating the Western press. How dare you? At least 217 Palestinian journalists have been murdered by Israel since October 7th, 2023, making this war in Gaza, it's not a war, it's a massacre inflicted by the Israelis on the Palestinian people who have no tanks, who have no helicopters, who have no military. The deadliest for journalists in human history. No big deal. That's more journalists who've been killed covering the genocide than died in all of World War II and Vietnam combined. Yes, World War II and Vietnam combined. That spans what? From 1939 to 1945, so that's 6 years. And Vietnam was another 1965 through 1973, another 8 years. So you're talking about 14 years worth of actual war where there was shooting on both sides and journalists embedded with troops. All of that combined, every journalist that died isn't as much as the 217 that were killed already in the last 18 months by Israel themselves. Every other country on earth can't add up to what fucking Israel did. Again, 217 Palestinian journalists murdered by Israel since October 7th. How many times? 217 fuck Israels for that, for sure.
Yep.
217 million fuck Israels for that. If we pair the shift in coverage from these media outlets with the change in rhetoric from their respective governments, or at least major political parties they align with, it begins to make sense what's truly happening here. Well, what is happening here, Robert? Hillary Clinton was one of the proponents of the systematic Hamas rape campaign hoax, which worked to justify the continued slaughter of civilians in the name of going after Hamas, despite there being no evidence to support this claim. And now she calls for humanitarian aid to enter Gaza. Fuck off, Hillary. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer also delivered remarks calling for an end to the suffering in Gaza and urging Israel to allow the free flow of aid into the besieged coastal territory. At the same time, however, he continues to sell weapons components to the Israeli military and punishes activists domestically for standing in the way of the weapons industry's role in genocide. Oh, also, he's sending spy flights. He's sending fucking spy flights daily from Incirlik base in Cyprus to oversee and monitor Gaza for the AI drones to be able to come and murder everybody that's in the area. Yeah, thanks, Kid Starver. It suffices to say that this is not authentic. It's all performative. Why? Why? It comes down to a few different reasons. The first is that the scale of the starvation inflicted in Gaza was becoming a bad look for Israel's allies. Unlike the case with bombing, there's literally no excuse that works to justify stopping food from reaching a civilian population. And then there's the aspect that that the Western governments and media are putting on a show as they sense that the genocide is in its final stages. The governments make empty statements without any real action to follow it up, and while Western media gets to try and salvage their tarnished image, the whole world has watched every outlet, once held up as the gold standard of journalism, lie so blatantly and work as stenographers for the Israeli Foreign Ministry. So now, in order to enter relevancy on the topic, they have to put up a front that they're holding the Israelis to account. This also opens the door for them to begin shaping the confines of what the acceptable discourse on the issue should be after it has clearly gotten out of their control. From right to left, the politically non-affiliated, all major social media influencers and independent reporters are now comparing Israel to the Nazis, and they call what's happening in Gaza a genocide, as do we. These comparisons just a year ago were viewed as socially unacceptable. And now it's normal for people to liken Netanyahu to Hitler. Although shitlibs are still calling Trump Hitler, and which would, I guess, track because Trump is sending the weapons to Netanyahu. So in that case, they're in cahoots. I mean, Trump is literally opening...
We are the United States government. We don't do that sort of thing.
Well, that's what you would say, except that he pulls out Bibi's chair for him, literally. Can I sit you down, sir? The mask has fallen off Western leadership and their corporate media machinery. They aren't allowed to suddenly pretend as if they weren't complicit in the Gaza genocide. At the very least, they need to apologize. Apologize! Not to their own public that they've failed and lied to, but also to the Palestinians who've managed to survive this Holocaust. I don't think that I'm sorry that we whitewashed your genocide really is going to happen, nor would it have the effect that Robert thinks it would, but it's a nice sentiment. All right?
We're sorry.
That's right, we're sorry. We're so sorry.
We're sorry. Sorry.
That's BP. That's the BP. Oh, dude, so good. All right, well, fuck Israel for that. Fuck Israel also for still imprisoning Dr. Hossam Abu Safia. It's now been more than
Agreed.
200 days that he's been in prison, tortured. We don't even know exactly where at this point. All right, really bad, and we stand in solidarity. Even Amnesty International is calling for his release. All right.
Oh, of course. Way
I
late.
also wanted to bring this article where I've never really heard of this guy before, but I thought this was a good one. It is morally wrong to support the two-state solution for Israel-Palestine.
Yep.
Politicians do it because they want to hide the fact that they support Zionist ethnic cleansing. France and the UK and other nations are now saying they will or might recognize the Palestinian state as if that were a courageous act of justice. It is not. Right? So, calling violent ethnic cleansing the creation of two separate states is like calling decapitation by guillotine a cure for acid reflux. Many people who, to their credit, want to support justice in Israel-Palestine and want to support human rights for Palestinians and want to end the unjust oppression of Palestinians that's inflicted upon them by Israel's occupation of the West Bank wrongly think that the way to do this is to support the two-state solution. This is a terrible mistake, and here's why. So this is a somewhat long and historical article. That's actually not that long. Okay, so here we go. First, the number one grievance of Palestinians is that the Israeli government has for many decades been carrying out violent ethnic cleansing to remove them from the 78% of Palestine that is now called Israel, just because they're not Jews. The number one demand of Palestinians, a totally righteous demand, is to end the ethnic cleansing by allowing the Palestinian refugees to exercise their right of return to freely live anywhere in Palestine, including the part called Israel, where they once lived until they violently were driven out by Zionist leaders in 1947-8 and again in 1967, and are driven out even today by unjust oppression, such as the demolition of their homes, which Israel has been doing, both by bomb and by bulldozer. This ethnic cleansing serves only the rich and harms ordinary Israeli Jews as well as Palestinians. This ethnic cleansing, contrary to what Israeli leaders claim, is not at all for the purpose of making Israeli Jews safe. It's for the purpose of enabling the billionaire Israeli ruling class, and yes, Israel has one just like the U.S. does, and in some cases they're dual citizens like the Adelsons, to make Palestinians a boogeyman enemy with which to frighten Israeli working class Jews into obedience to the Israeli upper class that pretends to protect them from this quote-unquote enemy. Note that the Israeli government has and still does fund Hamas, at least partially, and he's got receipts for that from pdrboston.org. All right. Israel's government attacks ordinary Jews as well as Palestinians. Okay, so that's also in another article. Again, far from ending the terrible ethnic cleansing, it makes it permanent. The two-state solution is by definition to end the conflict by having the Palestinians agree to forfeit forever their right of return to the 78% of Palestine now called Israel. In exchange for having a tiny piece of Palestine, it would actually be even less than 22%, because much of the West Bank, where there are lots of Jewish settlers living, would be added to and now become part of what is now Israel in any actual settlement. Okay, it would be nominally only a quote-unquote Palestinian state. I've been saying that forever. This Palestinian state would be no more independent of the Israeli government than is the nominally independent region of Gaza independent of the Israeli government. Same thing. Gaza is a place in which residents can't even leave and into which residents cannot import anything without the permission of the Israeli government. They also can't have a military They can't have a government. They can't have a lot of things because the two-state solution, quote unquote, is simply a way to make the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians permanent. All Israeli prime ministers have supported it in principle, and some, such as Ehud Olmert, have declared it to be essential to the survival of Israel as a Jewish state, aka as a state based on the ethnic cleansing of non-Jews. He admits it. He comes out right in print. Not only is the ethnic cleansing of non-Jews from Palestine a terrible injustice to the Palestinians, it is also part of an attack on the welfare of ordinary Jews living in Israel, as I discuss in some detail in this other article that he wrote. The two-state solution is only good for the billionaire upper-class people who rule Israel and the United States. Bill Ackman's another one. The existence of Israel as a Jewish state, it is actually no more a state than the benefit of ordinary Jews than the United States is a state for the benefit of ordinary Americans. All right? The existence of a Jewish state is part of a ruling class strategy to control and dominate Americans as well as Jews living in Israel, as discussed in this leaflet I co-authored and in this article I wrote here. When a politician cites his or her support for the two-state solution as a way of claiming to be for justice in Israel, Palestine, it's a lie. The two-state solution is an oppressive and unjust attack on both Palestinians and ordinary Jews living in Israel. Politicians know this. We should know it too. All right. And then, yeah, here it goes. This was from Ehud Olmert from 2007. And I thought that was interesting. And again, what?
Go back in.
Go ahead.
Just read that.
Yes,
so
quote.
The day comes when the two-state solution collapses and we face a South African-style struggle for equal voting rights. Then, as soon as that happens, the state of Israel is finished. Prime Minister Ehud Olmert told Haaretz Wednesday, the day the Annapolis conference ended, an agreement to try to reach a Middle East peace settlement by the end of
2008.
The Jewish organizations, which were our power bases in America, will be the first to come out against us, Olmert said, because they will say they cannot support a state that does not support democracy and equal voting rights for all its residents. Okay. Sure.
Yes, and he's not wrong about any of that. So why did it take 20 fucking years?
Yeah.
All right. Now, this one was, my God.
Yeah,
Camera for bread. Gaza journalists are now selling their equipment in the hunger market. In a time when photography has shifted from a means of revealing the truth to a lifeline for survival, Gaza's journalists stand at the fragile boundary between their profession and staying alive. Okay? These guys are now selling their cameras because they literally have nothing left to give, to sell, and they feel like they've already done all the reporting there is to report. If you can't figure it out by now, guys, what the fuck? Like, how much more do they have to give?
Right.
If the price is saving my children from death, then I'm at peace with my decision. With these words, Palestinian journalist Bashir Abu al-Shair summed up the most difficult choice of his life, trading his camera, the one he carried into the most dangerous places to document years of war and what he called his third eye and companion through every path of coverage and documentation, for a sack of flour. It wasn't an easy decision, but at a time of genocide, it became one necessary for survival. Okay. He said it came as a result of a tragic reality I've never experienced before. 42-year-old father of 7. He affirmed that Israeli-imposed starvation has stripped everyone of their dignity and choices. There used to be a saying that no one dies of hunger, but that proverb collapsed at Gaza's borders. Everything that once pulsed with life has died of hunger here. Those who remain alive are battling death just to survive. All right, the markets are nearly empty of food supplies. 140 days, I would guess so. All the stocks are gone. The famine is growing more brutal by the day, claiming the lives of those already worn down by pain and hunger. It spares no one. Siege, starvation, displacement, and killing all are tools the occupation uses against us. His children hadn't even eaten bread in days. They cry out from hunger, and I'm powerless to help. We're watching our children die before our eyes while the world does nothing. Despite these harsh conditions, journalists in Gaza continue to document what's happening around them. Every day we step out on shaky legs from hunger to capture the suffering of others, even though we're living the same pain. For more than a year and 8 months, he has not stopped covering massacres, displacement, and tragedies, despite being injured twice and his home getting bombed. Of course he did, because the Israelis targeted his home, I'm sure. I'm just wondering how many family members he's had killed.
Yeah.
He said, I'm a Palestinian journalist who survived death multiple times, suffered injuries, had my home bombed, but I'm not alone. My fellow journalists are also starving. Nearly 2 million people in Gaza are dying of hunger. Save us before it's too late. The Gaza Government Media Office, which is a joke of a name itself, announced that the severity and spread of famine are worsening across all governorates following the Israeli occupation's complete closure of crossings for now 147 days and the blockade on the entry of infant formula and humanitarian aid. And water. That's the other thing that a two-state solution does not allow for, by the way, was water and electricity rights. The office stated in a press release that Gaza requires at least 500,000 bags of flour weekly to prevent a total humanitarian collapse. It emphasized that the continued siege and blockade of food and medical supplies will accelerate the impending disaster. Again, completely intentional by Israel. In the latest statistics available at the time of publication, the Gaza Health Ministry announced that famine-related deaths have now risen to 154 cases, the majority being children and the elderly. We've seen the pictures, man. It's heartbreaking. Amid a complete absence of any politically binding or serious international response. Journalist Ahmed Abdel-Aziz is no better off. Again, he says the situation in Gaza is unbelievable. People are collapsing in the streets from hunger. There's no cash liquidity, and even if there is, prices in the markets are astronomical and unaffordable. He described the U.S. and Israeli-run aid distribution points as death traps. Again, we've covered that before. Quote, those who go to fetch a sack of flour sometimes return as body parts inside that very sack. Like al-Shair, Aziz also had to make the difficult decision to sell his equipment for food. I sold one of my microphones I used to document the war since its start, but the money only lasted me 2 days. Now with great pain, I say I'll have to sell my professional camera. Before the war, a sack of flour cost $15. Today, a kilogram costs $30. A loaf of bread is $3. And each person needs at least 2 loaves per meal. We're talking about prices that no one can afford. Here's another photojournalist. Spent over 20 years documenting life in Gaza through his lens. Fadi Tibet. From rare moments of joy to daily tragedies, now finds himself forced to part with his entire archive to feed his children. This archive spans decades and contains thousands of images and videos that capture Palestinian suffering and resilience. We carry cameras to convey the truth. Then we return home empty-handed, except for the world's abandonment. How do we film death and then live it? He had apologized for initially postponing his interview due to exhaustion from severe hunger. We are not only enduring hunger in our stomachs, but also the oppression of dignity and stripping of humanity. Again, totally the intent and point of what Israel is doing. There is a systematic policy to starve the Palestinian people in Gaza amid this genocidal war to break their will, he said. Babette also described the dire circumstances that forced him to sell a year's worth of visual memory for a single sack of flour. We're now in the 5th stage of famine. People's faces are pale, their eyes hollow, seeing nothing but fear and hunger. There's no longer such a thing as hope. The world wears a cloak of shame before images of mothers and children dying of hunger. The vet concluded that the battle in Gaza is now no longer just against extermination, but also against a hunger that devours humanity. Families who survived rockets and bombings now find themselves fighting for a piece of bread. It's so fucking cruel. And the scarce aid, if it arrives, turns into a threat to life or an unattainable dream, he said. With every sale of equipment and photo archive for survival, the world loses another set of eyes that bear witness to the truth in Gaza. Again, Israel's intent. Amid these testimonies of starvation, the cries of Gaza's journalists coalesce into a single message: save us before the voice is buried along with the image. Again, that's from Prism magazine, Prism Reports, prismreports.org. But I got more. I'm not going to go through this one. This is a long one from Sam Husseini. 12 points on the Zionist-occupied territory and Epstein. Democrats suddenly pretending to call out Epstein and talk about a billionaire cabal. They won't mention Lex Wexner. The two deadly arms of empire manipulate their bases to ensure genocide. So go read that one. I'm going to put that in the description. All right. And then the ones I did want to show was this one. Oh, my God. So we got Trina Parsi put this one about Anthony Aguilar. And I don't know if you've seen this, but this is a Green Beret who testified and went on British TV or Israeli TV and literally was saying that he saw a 5-year-old Palestinian boy kiss his hands to thank him for the food he gave him. Seconds later, Israeli soldiers shot and killed the starving child. ISIS prisoners were treated with more dignity than these kids, he said. All right. And there's a 1:11 video. I guess we'll show that.
And he put down the little food he has. You notice he doesn't have a box. He doesn't have a box of food. He has half of a bag of rice that he found on the ground, a broken bag, half a bag of lentils that he found on the ground, and he was thanking us. Thank you. This little boy from where he came from walked 12 kilometers to get there, just to get there. 12 kilometers. Look at this boy. And when he got there, he thanked us for the remnants and the small crumbs that he got. And he sets them down on the ground because I was kneeling at this point, and he sets his food down and he places his hands on my face, on the side of my face, on my cheeks, these frail, skeleton, emaciated hands, dirty. And he puts them on my face and he kissed me. He kissed me and he said, thank you, in English. Thank you. And he collected his items and he walked back to the group. And then he was shot at with pepper spray and tear gas and stun grenades and bullets shot at his feet and in the air. And he runs away scared. And the IDF were shooting at the crowd. So they're shooting to control the population that's along the Marag corridor. And as they're doing that, they're shooting into this crowd. And Palestinian civilians, human beings, are dropping to the ground, getting shot. And Amir was one of them. Amir walked 12 kilometers to get food, got nothing but scraps, thanked us for it, and died.
Yeah. So Trina Parsi again put that video up as well as the pictures.
I served in the Army for 25 years. I've been shot 3 times in combat. I'm pretty tough.
Another 2
this
minutes.
gets me every time because to what you're saying, the dehumanization. And what I want to say to the American people and to the people of Israel, I've been there. I have touched them. I have talked to them. The civilians in Gaza that are getting the food, they are starving. They are not animals. They are human beings. And they're being treated like animals. We treat these civilians in Gaza worse, with less dignity than we treated the ISIS fighters that surrendered in Baghouz Faghani in Syria in 2018. This young boy, this is on May 28th on secure distribution site number 2. The The aid had been distributed. A lot of people had left. You see behind, there's a crowd of people still with their boxes, kind of getting ready to leave. And this little boy, his name is Amir, and he was standing, he was with the crowd, but he walks over, and you see that first picture on the top right. He kind of walks over to me, and he puts out his hand. And at first I thought like that he wanted more food or something, and I felt bad because I didn't have anything. But I was like, oh, I have nothing. And he puts out his hand, and so I beckoned him to come to me. I said, come here. And he reaches out and he holds my hand and he kisses my hand. He kisses my hand and he says, Shukran. You can see in this picture that this little boy is not wearing shoes. His clothes are falling off of him because he's so skinny.
He walked 12 kilometers.
I put my hand on his left shoulder and I looked at him and he's looking at me. We're looking at each other in the eyes. And I say to him, people care. You're a human being and people care about you. The world
they fucking
cares.
Killed him.
That's not Hamas. That's not a Hamas fighter. And I looked at him and I said, the world cares.
And then Israel fucking killed him. Like minutes later. Sarah continues, Amir walked 12 kilometers barefoot to get food. He kissed the hand of an American soldier, thanking him for a bag of rice and lentils. Then Israel killed Amir right in front of the soldier, a child, grateful for lentils, executed in broad daylight. Amir was 5 years old. And the person who murdered him, nothing will happen to.
Nope.
Fuck Israel. The soldier's name that testified there is Anthony Aguilar. He's come out as a whistleblower. He's not the only one. There's now another one, an IDF soldier now coming out whistleblowing, saying that they were called off their posts on October 7th for the 3 hours that the raid, the attack happened. How about that? But finally, I wanted to bring this. This is the last drone footage that we've seen that Israel does not want getting out. All right, an aerial view of what Gaza City area looked like this week, taken from a Jordanian military aircraft by our colleague at Heidi Photos. Those are hollowed out buildings. There is nothing left. Somebody also noted that there is not one bit of green anywhere in this photograph.
Yep.
Destroyed. All of it. All right. Not only that, but note that this image had to be smuggled out of that military aircraft against Israeli orders, like the Maladi de Famine photos smuggled out of Warsaw in 1942 that documented what was going on at Auschwitz. And then I brought this. Israel does not want the world to see the aerial footage of Gaza, but Al-Arabi TV journalist Dalal Mawad got it. The world must see this destruction and the tent cities. Here we go. 28 seconds. I got sound. Boom. There's the tent cities on the beach.
ولكن من دون فرض عقوبات تستمر الإبادة تحت أعين العالم. تلال معوض، التلفزيون العربي من سماء قطاع غزة.
Jesus. Just nothing left. There's nothing left. Except the people that have survived. Managed to survive 18, 19, 20 months of, 22 months now of destruction and famine and the healthcare system being completely destroyed. And no water for 3.5 months, etc., since March 2nd. Disgraceful. Fuck Israel. And fuck the United States government for funding, arming this. Fuck everybody. They all, including the corporate press, they all need to be brought on charges. I want a Nuremberg too for all of this. We need to have some kind of reckoning for this. Yes, Greg, almost like an inside job. Fog of war, right. Fog of war. That's what they'd say. Something 15 years ago was a sci-fi horror, except that they did this 15 years ago, too. And they got allowed to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
People ask, how did it happen? Because our people are as stupid as the Germans were in World War II. We got people right now that are cheering this shit on. Look at fucking Twitter. All the Trumpers that they now turned into genocide defenders because he's arming and funding it. Well, that was a long fuck Israel. And for that, we're not going to get remonetized by YouTube on this channel. So if you're able to, and it means, please subscribe, support, do it through another platform other than YouTube or any of the others. Cash App, $, Indie News Network. There's like no fee. Ko-fi.com/Indie News Network. There's a small one. PayPal.me/Indie News Network. As friends and family, there's no fee. Or you can also go to IndieNewsNow.com. That's our website, and keep the media free there. Go through Stripe. Or you can go to INNnewsletter.com or IndieMediaToday.com. Those are over at Substack, where we are live right now. Seven Sign Soul, Nuremberg was held because of the degree of sadism of the atrocities there. You think there ain't a similar degree of sadism here?
Yeah.
We've got rape and torture prisons that the Israelis are fighting for, like to do more of. Gross. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. And I'll see you soon, folks. Love you.
Bye.
Bye, Felicia. Mwah. Ciao, baby.
No! We just fucking lost the stream!
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days, and I still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to make, but God, it's so hard to say. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe? Were you safe?
Who are these people?
Now, guess what time it is, everyone, kids? It's time for Fuck Israel. Yay! I need an applause line for that. It's time for Fuck Israel, everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Who are these people?
No, well, these people are, those are our supporters. But no, the first person I want to bring up is Indie Media Award honoree Paula Iacella. All right? Incredible Assange activist who has been posting every day on her Facebook an image talking about what day it is since the last blockade and any serious aid has gotten in, any food. This is day 161. And she then puts a whole summary in her post, but I'm just going to show the graphic. I got a lot of stuff to show this week. 161 days without food, water, or medicine. Israel's aid plan for Gaza is a key part of its strategy to corral Palestinians into concentration camps to expel or kill, which is their final stage of ethnic cleansing. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is the most gaslighting name I've ever seen. Those sites are human slaughterhouses. Aid systems are a tactic of Israel's genocide. The clock's been ticking since March 2nd. And you see across the graphic in yellow, it says, aid drops crush Gaza children. And we're going to show a little bit of that. Not that, but the result of that. But before we do that, the first thing I wanted to bring was a video from Mossab Abu Toha. All right. This is an Egyptian video. This is most of you have not seen yet. It was filmed aboard an Egyptian aid plane and aired on Egyptian TV. All right. Just 3 hours ago, it captured even more shocking scenes of devastation. Again, this was 4 days ago. The Egyptian journalist describes Gaza as the city of rubble.
صورة حزينة في غزة. صورة حزينة لهذا الواقع.
There's no sound.
هذه هي غزة التي كانت.
This is what Israel does not want the world to see.
Let me just compare and compare New English.
English, motherfucker, do you speak it?
Hiroshima, Nagasaki.
It's worse.
I mean,
it's worse.
Britain after the bombings. Yeah, it's way worse.
I don't know why there's no sound, but that's what he describes. It's shocking, city of rubble. And then they're going to show more scenes in a second. This is insane. It's what we knew has been happening and what they are trying to gaslight into saying, well, Hamas has been blowing up every building in Gaza. What do you mean? That's Netanyahu literally came out and said that. It hasn't been the IDF, it's been Hamas.
Accusation.
There you go. Here's even more overhead helicopter footage. There's people walking along a corridor. And then just piles of rubble that used to be buildings and homes and apartments and shops and life.
Businesses and, hospitals and schools and banks.
From Furkan Gozukara, all right, this is a time-lapse, the first time-lapse video of ethnic cleansing in history. Right? And this is 19 seconds. 2023, you see all the green. 2024, it starts disappearing. 2025. 23, 24, 25. Almost no green anywhere, especially in Gaza. There was green early on. There was city. There was life. There was activity. Then there was stuff down here. Again, all gone. All gone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's barely a fence line. You can see because they moved that fence line in 1.5 miles. We know this already. So, speaking of that aid drop stuff, and we talked about aid drops last week about how Andy Worthington was saying, well, maybe, hopefully there's aid drops. And I saw that, what's his Zoran, that fucking dumbass liberal. All right.
Bob.
All right. Zoran was like, oh, or airdrops, that's a good thing. No, airdrops are a bad thing, okay? Airdrops are woefully inadequate. Okay, airdrops injure people, and airdrops are usually dropped into areas where the fucking IDF shoots people for going. So, again, let's watch this one.
Lands right on a group of people.
Oh, if there was sound, we just didn't hear it. This kid was killed when an aid crate dropped on his head and killed him instantly.
Yep.
And the sad thing
Another
is the
one
Zionists...
in the practically thousands of lists of martyrs at this point.
The Zionists would call this Pallywood, and they would say that he's staged and a crisis actor.
Assholes.
Like, what? We saw the fucking thing drop. Look at the size of those pallets. They fall on somebody, they're going to kill them.
Yeah.
Right? Ugh, just fucking heartbreaking.
Keep in mind, there's fucking hundreds of aid trucks.
Speaking of
right
which,
outside.
Hey, I know that guy.
Mm-hmm.
Reef tweeted, we covered this piece from Yusuf Al-Nono.
Yusuf Al-Nono.
Right, at the Electronic Intifada over on IndieNewsNow last month about how airdropped aid brought death. Right, that was last month. Or last year, was it last July?
Yeah, and no, it was this July.
That was the video.
You scroll back up. So in that, right? So he talks about this, surreal to see this large plane flying so low. People started waving their hands so the pilot could see them and drop aid, right? He talks about this John a Hot word, right? Which means like wing and, means a lot of stuff, right? Tilting in the sky when they released packages of aid. But there was something wrong. Why was the aid package spinning at such a high speed? I saw that it did not have a parachute, or that the parachute had not opened, and that it would fall to the ground. I looked around and was shocked. Everyone had fled and was hiding to protect themselves. I didn't know where to go, and suddenly the first one fell with a huge crash that spread dust everywhere. While I was trying to avoid the package, the second one fell on a donkey, killing it. Its owner had been forced to leave it while he ran for his life. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. I was shocked by the sight of blood everywhere. I stepped forward to where the first box had dropped and pulled a box of dates from it. So this has been happening. Yep. Children know to avoid these boxes. Like,
on top of the fact that they've been dropping fucking drugs in the aid, and we covered that a couple weeks ago.
Oh, not to mention the aid generally full of mold and fucking outdated supplies.
Right. Here's another one. All right. Now, remember, the Israelis are denying that they have been blocking the aid into Gaza, which is unbelievable. But literally, they have citizens with children standing and blocking trucks. This was August 4th at 3 o'clock in the morning. All right. Israelis bringing their children to obstruct aid trucks while entering through Allenby Bridge in Jericho to head to Gaza, where 2 million people are being systematically starved and bombed. Children. I mean, every one of those parents should be in jail.
But Indy, they teach their kids to hate us.
Right. Right. Here's the quality of people that we're dealing with. Israeli doctors urging the bombing of Gaza hospitals. Urging. Fuck Israel. So, this one will really upset the shit out of me.
Again and again.
Normal Island News writes parody, and she's having a hard time writing parody these days. It's so fucking difficult. She says, Palestinian footballer dies of quote-unquote natural causes after bullet strikes him in aid queue.
Fucking, yeah.
Suleiman Al-Obeid, a renowned footballer nicknamed the Palestinian Pele, has sadly died of natural causes after a bullet struck him while he was queuing for aid near Rafah. He was 41 years old, which is an old man in Gaza, by the way. Most of the football world has fallen silent, but UEFA posted this heartfelt tribute that was carefully worded to avoid telling too much of the truth. Farewell to Suleiman Al-Obeid, the Palestinian Pele, a talent who gave hope to countless children, even in the darkest of times. Al-Obeid was queuing...
Who killed him?
Well, you know what? Oh, I had that. I don't know where it was. I had that tweet asking, who killed him? But, here it is. Yeah. Can you tell us how he died?
Where he died, where and why? Yeah,
how exactly. And where and why? Like, yeah. Right. There's the tweet from UEFA, which is, European football, right? All the experts. So wait, I skipped a. Al-Obeid was queuing for aid at a distribution site, which was run by the kind people at the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. You can imagine how upset they are by the latest outbreak of bullets on their watch. I'm told the soldiers, who definitely didn't pull the trigger, have been offered counseling. I hope they're okay. All the experts who are scared of Israel have explained that bullet ripped through Al-Obeid's emaciated body may have been caused by a genetic condition or poor lifestyle choices. No one can think an alternative source for this bullet. It's proving quite the mystery, given there's been a large outbreak of bullets in aid queues recently. Perhaps the bullets are contagious? Who knows? Even more mysteriously, a total of 662 Palestinian athletes and coaches have died in Gaza since October 7th of 2023, all of natural causes.
It's a pandemic.
Such as bombs and bullets. These deaths just happened to coincide with Israel destroying 288 sports facilities, including stadiums, training grounds, gyms, and clubhouses. Thankfully, FIFA has confirmed Israel won't be kicked out of any football tournaments because of this sort of thing. It's only bad when Russia does it.
Yep.
Only Laura at Normal Island News could somehow make that even close to funny or show how ridiculous it is. I also want to mention that our friend Gordon Dimmack wrote a beautiful tribute to Suleiman. So go read it at gordondimmack.com today. He went into the player and the man and the reason why he was revered. And he said that if this guy were from Argentina or Spain, he'd have been revered worldwide. And his death, his murder, would have been made newspapers in every fucking sports section around the world.
Everywhere.
Imagine they bombed Messi. Imagine they shot Messi while he was waiting in line. Imagine they shot Ronaldo while he was waiting in line for fucking food while they were starving him. Fuck Israel. And here's another reason why I say fuck Israel. This happened today. Anas al-Sharif, one of the most decorated, prominent journalists left in Gaza, was killed today by an airstrike targeted. He posted 45 minutes ago. He posted 45 minutes ago and now he's dead. Kinetic strike. Most likely keyed off his cell phone signal, which the IDF tracks, we know. The journalists in the West who toe the line with the New York Times editorial board. Any word for your colleague? Fuck Israel for that. Greg Stoker, but also...
It was like, what, four other journalists or whatever?
Yeah, there were 5.
Right?
And
they hit a tent of journalists.
In front of a hospital. Anas al-Sharif, respected Palestinian journalist and father of 2, was killed by an Israeli airstrike. He died wearing his press vest. It was mostly burned. She says, I won't share the footage of his final moments. It's horrific, but it tells the truth, and so did he. Anas, like so many journalists in Gaza, was killed for documenting a genocide the world wasn't supposed to see. Palestinian journalists have turned bloodshed into testimony, broadcasting truth from Gaza to our phones. They are true heroes. Oh, man. And then, just to show how monstrous and barbaric Israelis and the IDF can be, the Israeli occupation authorities forced Palestinian Hamza Ibrahim Amireh to destroy his own house in the town of Sur Baher in occupied Jerusalem.
West Bank.
Yeah. Now this is not Gaza. There's no Hamas here. Like, this guy has to do this to his own house. How fucking dystopian can it be? Like, you have to jackhammer your entire concrete house? Ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Words are not enough to describe.
Now, also, remember that there's this whole thing about how they elected Hamas. They elected Hamas. Well, first of all, there hasn't been an election in Gaza since 2006. So, and half the population's still under 18, so they never voted for Hamas.
18.
Right?
No.
Hamas has already been there, and Hamas has been...
And the PA's not much fucking better.
Oh, they're worse. But Hamas has been elevated and funded by Israel, as well as all the other, Arab states around. But this is a Kyle Anzalone, Indie Media Award honoree, antiwar.com, also from the Libertarian Institute. Hamas doesn't want to govern Gaza, but refuses to disarm. So in an interview with Saudi media, a top Hamas official said the group wanted to give up governing Gaza once the Israeli occupation ends, but is not willing to disarm. Quote, we don't want to be part of any administrative arrangements related to the management of Gaza's affairs, and we will not participate in either the government or the ruling party, an unnamed official explained. Additionally, he said that Hamas did not want to have a role at border crossings or escorting aid deliveries into Gaza. Hamas doesn't seek to be part of any arrangements related to managing the crossings or supervising the entry of aid. Wow, this is really interesting because that's not what Israel's saying Hamas wants. Israel's previously attacked Hamas's police force when it comes to escorting aid deliveries, right? The lack of an escort for aid trucks has led to starving Palestinians rushing the shipments and flooding them. Israeli forces have massacred Palestinians attempting to get aid off the trucks. The Hamas official ruled out disarmament. The problem has never been weapons. Then there's no talk of a disarmament now. The Palestinian people, along with Hamas, are subjected to unprecedented pressures as a result of the Israeli aggression. And we are responding positively to all initiatives and pressures aimed at halting the aggression. Israeli sources have ruled out reaching an agreement with Hamas, what a surprise, to end military operations in Gaza and release the remaining hostages by Palestinian groups. You mean the 10 that are still left alive? Prime Minister Benjamin war criminal Netanyahu is planning to order the occupation of all of the Strip and free the hostages by decisive military action. You mean the Hannibal Directive. The Hamas official said Netanyahu's escalation will endanger the remaining living hostages, like I just said. Any attempt to invade the Strip will expose the lives of Israeli prisoners held by Hamas to unprecedented danger. But again, Bibi's never cared about the hostages, and we know that for sure.
Correct.
So that was a relatively long fuck Israel segment with a lot of substance. Again, we're certainly not going to be refunded by, remonetized by YouTube for that. So if you're able to, out of means, please support the media you want to see in channels like this that talk about stuff like this. All right. So support the media you want to see so that we can continue doing this. So Cash App, $Indie News Network, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, paypal.me/Indie News Network, over at IndieNewsNow.com, which is our website, or over at Substack at INNnewsletter.com or at IndieMediaToday.com. I saw somebody in chat say something about how that they want to silence us and that fuck Israel segments are great, but I'm not going to stop doing them because we go live to 9 platforms specifically so that they cannot shut us down. Even if there's 5 of you that show up at our website, I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to keep talking about this, and I'm going to keep publishing it out to Substack and everywhere else that won't block me from doing so. Support independent media because we need it more than ever.
We are out of here. Mwah. Ciao, baby.
No! We just fucking lost the stream!
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days, and I still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to make, but God, it's so hard to say. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe? Were you safe?
Who are these people?
It's time. Everybody knows it's your favorite segment every week. It's...
What?
What was that?
Sorry. Okay,
is that for boats
music?
later?
That's what that was.
Is that for boats later? Oh, that's just okay. It's everybody's favorite time. It's Fuck
Just
Israel time.
Elevator music.
Every day is
Did
Fuck
really
Israel
well,
Day when
honestly.
when they're committing genocide. So I'm just gonna
Segment
start
intro.
nice with a Sky News, and because you know how much we love corporate media around here. Officials say that more than 100 people have been killed in Gaza in 24 hours, making it the deadliest day in a week.
A week?
100 people in 24 hours is the deadliest day in a week. Fuck Israel. Yes, and Tiberius, of course, has to point out, still less deadly than 10 minutes in Philippi. I don't even know what that means. Yeah, okay, and then you've got all the garbage clowns in the replies. So, and not to be
scroll Twitter,
not to be outdone.
Gross.
All right, Dave DeCamp at antiwar.com. Israeli forces killed 50 Palestinians in Gaza over 24 hours, and another 4 Palestinians starved to death due to the U.S.-backed Israeli blockade. Isn't that nice? So. This was August 14th. That was 3 days ago, so that was on Thursday. Gaza's health ministry said on Thursday that Israeli forces killed 50 Palestinians over the previous 24-hour period. As relentless U.S.-backed Israeli attacks continue across the Strip amid Israel's preparation to escalate its genocidal war, because they haven't murdered enough yet. The health ministry said that the bodies of another 4 Palestinians killed by previous attacks were recovered. Quote, a number of victims still under the rubble and on the streets, where ambulance and civil defense crews are unable to reach them at this time because they've destroyed all the roads. I didn't even know there were any ambulances left at this point. On top of the violent deaths, Palestinians continue to starve to death due to the Israeli blockade and restrictions on aid. The health ministry said that it recorded 4 malnutrition deaths over 24 hours, which brings the total number of victims of famine and malnutrition alone to 239, including 106 children. There's a photo of one killed in an airstrike. Among those violently killed by the IDF were desperate Palestinians seeking food aid. We're going to cover more of that. The health ministry said that 22 aid seekers were killed and another 269 were injured. Of course, they don't have the medical capabilities to really take care of those 269 by design. Since the U.S.-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, you mean American mercenaries, began operating at the end of May, the health ministry has recorded the deaths of 1,881 aid seekers and the injuries of 13,863.
Starving people.
Unbelievable. The Palestinian
awful
news agency, WAFA, reported that at least 5 Palestinians were killed by Israeli fire near an aid center north of the southern city of Rafah. The news agency also reported Israeli airstrikes and shelling in Khan Yunis and Gaza City. I think one of those shot by Israeli fire in the north was child. At least 8 Palestinians were killed in an Israeli bombing of a house in Gaza City's Zaytun neighborhood. Israel has significantly ramped up its attacks on Gaza City as it's preparing to launch a new offensive to take it over, a plan that involves forcibly displacing 1.2 million civilians with artillery fire. The health ministry said that the latest violence has brought its death toll since October 7th, 2023 to 61,776 officially. Number of wounded to just over 154,000, almost 155. Studies have shown, of course, that the ministry's numbers are likely a significant undercount. And that's, I believe, the Nader article that says it's like 500,000. So, subscribe to antiwar.com. Dave DeCamp, great writer, one of the top Indie Media Award honoree, support independent media like that. Part of the Libertarian Institute, too. Now, I haven't brought one of this guy's articles in a while. Simplicius is Garden of something, Simplicius the Thinker. I think they used to call it his Garden of something. I think they got rid of that. But this was just laying it out. Israel announces the final plan to occupy Gaza. It sounds like a final solution. Yeah. Netanyahu has announced plans for the final takeover of Gaza, which he's announced as billing as liberation from Hamas. The way that they declared,
nothing justifies genocide.
The way they declared August 16th Liberation Day in D.C., right? It's unreal. Same type of shit or whatever, 15. I'm not going to play the RT video because I don't want to get it knocked out by YouTube. Then there's a timeline refresher from 2023 above to the present time below. Netanyahu says Israel doesn't seek to occupy Gaza. That was November 9th, 2023. But now, August 4th, 2025, he's decided on full occupation of Gaza Strip. All right. It's interesting how, given Netanyahu's above infographic,
fuck the hill.
Yeah, fuck the hill too.
Fuck them.
Israel's objectives in Gaza can be superficially compared to the Russian SMO. The difference is Russia is following international law, whereas Israel is breaking it. It was the UN itself which established the known precedent that a people have the right to self-determination when it came to Serbia being pressured to recognize Kosovo's independence. But in Donbass or even Gaza, no such right to self-determination and official recognition apparently exists. In Ukraine, Russia's only enforcing the UN's very own standards on self-determination, while in Gaza, Israel is breaking it. Interesting dichotomy there. To further highlight the hypocrisy, listen to J.D. Vance's latest statement, wherein he breezily describes taking military control over Gaza as being up to Israel. But the same privilege is for some reason not afforded to Russia in taking over Donbass. Why is that? Well, I think it's because Donbass was technically part of Ukraine, but they've separated. They've announced their independence and asked to align with Russia. They're mounting
9 years of bombing might fucking make you feel a way about it.
You might. It might. There are mounting issues for Bibi, who seeks as swift an operation as possible to mitigate growing disaster. Echoes of brewing civil war have erupted in Israeli society over growing exhaustion and the issue of Haredi military exceptionalism, meaning that the ultra-Orthodox don't have to serve. All right? And you can't go to war
I heard
with
someone complaining about that, too. One of these rabbis over there was like, they're not sending, they're sending our children or whatever.
Right. So this includes large ongoing general protests against the new Gaza occupation plan in Israel. Like, they're pissed. They don't want to occupy it either. Next is the fact that multiple world leaders have had enough of Bibi. Yeah, right. That's all a show. I'm not even going to blame
it on a baby.
Right. Macron announced France would officially recognize Palestine in September. Bullshit. Other major countries follows. Palestine already has an official delegation at the UN. Like, officially, like, who gives a shit? It's meaningless.
Yeah.
All right. Germany will, until further notice, authorize no military equipment exports that can be used in the Gaza Strip. Yeah, like they can fucking control that.
Meanwhile, their companies are already deciding to do so anyway.
Right? Yesterday, news broke that Trump had allegedly yelled at Bibi on the phone. Enough of this bullshit. This is all theater nonsense. They're all in cahoots. They're all part of this. Of course, virtually all the political reactions above are performative in nature, while every country secretly does its utmost in supporting Israel's military machine. These leaders are simply trying to sit in both chairs, appease their growing domestic Muslim crowds, while still carrying out their secret pro-Zionist directives. Not even secret. This is accelerated recently with many other subversive developments taking place. In Lebanon, there are renewed threats of civil war as the Lebanese government has raised pressure on Hezbollah to disarm, which would be insane because it just means your country's totally going to be taken over by Israel. In an interview with the Lebanese defense minister, apparently admitted to coordinating with Israel in disarming Hezbollah south of the Litani.
Hezbollah. What
Insane.
a fucking stooge.
Insane. Did Al Jazeera fabricate this interview?
Occupation! Fight the occupation!
That's a good one. Meanwhile, a cockamamie plan to relocate Lebanese Shiites to Iraq is even being floated as Israel clamps down on its plans to entirely dominate the surrounding region as total hegemon. That's nuts! So now they not only want to expel the Palestinians from Gaza, they want to expel the Lebanese Shiites to Iraq with all the other Shiites that are in Iraq.
Greater Israel. Anyone? Anybody?
This is in service of Greater Israel. Right? So then we've got Lebanon Shia are a majority estimated at close to 2 million. So you're going to drive 2 million people out of the country? How are you going to do that? I have an idea. It's the same way they did it to Gaza. Yep. They're going to destroy it block by block, bomb the fuck out of it. Unfortunately, that's in parallel to a recent uptick in coincidental events like Hezbollah ammo sites suddenly going up in flames. Huh. Yeah, you had at least 4 Lebanese troops killed, 7 injured by an ammo blast in the south of the country. Reports that they'd been taking down Hezbollah weapons depot. Footage from Lebanese media of ambulances racing the site. Right, but you don't get to see what happened. So this, again, we got maps, you know, Azerbaijan, that's also part of this also. That's why I wanted to bring this. U.S. and Israel continue to push toward total hegemony over the Middle East with an unprecedented urgency. On one hand, the urgency is derived from known geopolitical factors, i.e., time not being on Israel's side, but on another, from the momentum of a series of perceived successes, which has caused the U.S.-Israeli hegemon to believe that they can put the finishing blow on all remaining resistance in the region, because they've taken out Assad, they've taken out most of Hezbollah's leadership, so now the only thing left standing is Iran. And Yemen, of course, the little thorn in the side.
Yeah.
This, of course, refers to the fall of Syria, like I said, a newly perceived upper hand of Azerbaijan over Armenia, which has allowed the U.S.-Israeli Hydra to begin maneuvering for a stranglehold. This brought a recently narrowed focus on the Zangezur corridor.
Zangezur, yeah.
Yeah, where Armenia just signed over a 99-year lease of rights to the United States. I believe Vanessa Beeley wrote an article about this specific agreement. So go follow her and subscribe at vanessabeeley.substack.com. Another Indie Media Award honoree. I didn't bring that tonight. The new corridor is glibly being designated as the TRIP, or the Trump route for international peace and prosperity. Oh my God. Okay. As they bomb the fuck out of Yemen and Lebanon and Syria and soon to be Jordan and Egypt and Iraq. I mean, Greater Israel. Quote, the corridor links mainland Azerbaijan to its Nakhchivan enclave. Nakhchivan, right? Which is separated by a 32-kilometer stretch of Armenian territory, while maintaining the sovereignty of Armenia over the territory. The route will be operated according to Armenian law, and the U.S. will sublease the land to a consortium for infrastructure and management for up to 99 years. I wonder who that consortium is going to be run by. I wonder if there'll be any Israeli influence in there. Huh. It will facilitate trade, energy transit, and regional connectivity, including rail lines oil and gas pipelines, fiber optic
More
cables, and
importantly-
roadways. Many hardline figures in Iran naturally reacted with scathing condemnation, as the deal clearly implies the positioning of U.S. assets directly on Iran's northern border. They don't give a fuck.
Yep. No.
I mean, look, we supported Israel bombing them with air support earlier this year, and they didn't do shit really to us. What they hit the thing in Qatar that they warned them in advance they were going to do. Keep in mind, Iran has already notably been attacked by Israel using Azerbaijani corridors in the last series of exchanges, with attack flight paths charted here. All right, so Simplicius has actually like done the work here to chart all this stuff out. As such, it's clear that the deal opens up another potential avenue to box Iran in from the north, which obviously stands to be a highly destabilizing development, as Iran will be forced to react. I mean, what would we do?
Well, there's also
go ahead.
Also coincides with the David corridor too, which is like the other part of this that, you know, essentially it's we're doing two things at once to try to encroach and encircle, essentially. You know,
right?
So,
Natalie Williams, happy birthday to you. Good to see you here. Sorry, it's in the middle of this awful segment, but I saw you there. Right. That being said, many have expressed justifiable doubts about the extent of Trump's deal. Of course, because everything taco, but it's not taco. It's actually Trump always collapses. Is more like it. The deals that he announces always collapse. It can be directly compared to Trump's superficial milestone for the development of Ukrainian land, which everyone knows was nothing more than a political performance and has no real chance of bearing fruit. Similarly here...
He prefers taco salads anyway.
Right? Sure. Although he doesn't like the spice. We know that. Similarly here, the deal puts points on Trump's scoreboard, but leaves huge questions as to how much it can actually tangibly accomplish. Some have rightfully called into question the U.S.'s ability to even construct railways back home, let alone build out such ambitious freight lines into a new Silk Road-esque corridor in distant Eurasia, a feat that requires a major suspension of disbelief. The U.S. is no China. We can't even get high-speed rail in California. Either way, the economic angle of Trump's prosperity route deviously conceals the real geopolitical motives, which, as is always the case in Trump's administration, are tied to benefiting Israel first and foremost. The U.S.'s involvement on Iran's border can only be designed to put new pressures on Iran while facilitating the long-term Zionist plan to dismember or destroy Israel's arch nemesis once and for all. Right? So even Mark Ames says so. The only problem is any gain for Azerbaijan is a gain for Turkey, and a gain for Turkey is a loss for Israel. Thus works the immutable balance of powers of the region's zero-sum game. Also, the action has potential to create the unintended consequence of further strategically uniting Iran and Russia over the unwelcome breach in this shared critical region of theirs. Recall the infamous 2019 RAND report on destabilizing Russia, which lays out 6 possible U.S. moves in the current geopolitical competition. Provide lethal arms to Ukraine, which we did. Resume support to the Syrian rebels, which we did. Promoting regime change in Belarus, which we did. Exploiting Armenian and Azeri tensions, which we did. Intensifying attention to Central Asia and isolating Transnistria, a Russian-occupied enclave within Moldova. Watch this space. To come back around, Israel's new Gaza operation is meant as a final solution, as literally outlined by Israeli officials. And I'm not going to put that douchebag up. Note the above. Palestinians are to be processed into central camps with anyone remaining in the city.
Okay, yeah.
Yep. Not concentrated into camps, i.e. those who refuse to be forcibly and ethnically cleansed.
Central camps.
They'll be designated as Hamas militants and appropriately destroyed. This IDF plan is meant to bring Gaza under total Israeli control.
Keep an eye out for the Zyklon B purchases from Israel. I'm just saying.
Seriously. This IDF final plan is meant to bring Gaza under total Israeli control, but with increasing mass casualty incidents for the IDF of late, it remains to be seen how successful this latest bumbling foray can be. We can only expect more of the same failure, with Netanyahu again forced to drum up an Iranian threat to extricate himself from another self-made disaster in a few months' time. The only question will be, will Trump, reportedly experiencing declining popularity for the first time, not fifth time, owing to his diehard Zionism, will Trump support the inevitable future escalation train against Iran? Or has he finally had enough?
Yes.
And will he find the backbone to stand up to his boss once and for all? No.
Like he had one to begin with. Okay.
His boss isn't Bibi, it's Miriam Adelson. It's the Mossad.
Yeah.
Latest polls continue to show a strong Democrat surge for the 2026 midterms. There's always blowback in the in the midterms after a changeover presidential election. So I expect the Democrats are probably going to.
They've elected the new pope.
No, not a new pope, a new Congress. There'll be a new Congress.
Whatever.
Right, but of course,
same difference.
Yeah, in the incorrigibly corrupted AIPAC-owned Republicans, guess what? The Democrats are AIPAC-owned too. Both sides.
AIPAC-controlled Dems, yeah. Both sides, Johnson.
As a last related note, here's eminent economist Richard Wolff being very direct about what comes next. And I'll let him say it.
Old Wolfie.
The American empire is over. We're done.
Oh, maybe.
We peaked about 12, 15 years ago, and we are on a down. And it's very hard for the American people, which I understand. I am one. It's hard to get your head around that. We've had a century of on the way up, which is a lot more fun than on the way down. But it does happen to every empire. We're only the latest. Look at the British, how far they've fallen. We're in that process. If you take the United States together with the other G7 countries, that used to be the dominant bloc of the world, right? The United States, let's just enumerate them so everybody knows. Canada, Japan, Germany, France, Italy, and Britain, okay? The G7 world. I'm going to add up all the GDP, gross domestic product, total output of goods and services of all of those 7 countries, U.S. and its major allies. And now I'm going to compare it to the gross added up GDPs of China and its allies, known now as the BRICS. Okay, you add up the United States, about 28% of world output. You add up China and the BRICS, it's 35% of the world output. We aren't the wealthiest bloc in the world. We're number 2. And that's new. And that changes everything.
And if you ain't
and
first,
you can rattle
you're
your
last.
sabers all over the place. You put the 7th Fleet in the South China Sea. Isn't going to change that. You've got to come to terms with that, but we are led by people who don't want to do that because nobody wants to be the politician who has to explain to the people it's over.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So
just keep in mind, BRICS modeled after the World Bank.
Yes, BRICS is no better than the United Nations. That's right. BRICS is just another behemoth like NATO.
Empire.
Right. So fuck Israel for all that.
That's you.
Journalist and scholar Asal Rod fixed it for you. Okay, it's not just bad coverage of Gaza. Western media is also largely ignoring what's happening in West Bank, which we have been talking about, because if they reported all of it accurately, the public would see that Israel's real goal is stealing all the land and erasing Palestinian existence. What do you mean? Oh, the West Bank is seeing a creeping Nakba. What? Amazing. But people aren't really paying attention.
A lot of stuff happens that the news won't tell you.
But that's Haaretz. That's even in Israel. They're telling everyone what's happening.
Yeah.
And as Vassal reminds us, we covered last week, this is why Israel murders journalists. Because
I brought this on Wednesday.
Did you?
It's a good graphic from this
year. It is a good graphic.
Sure.
From this year. All right. And I think that was all I had tonight for Fuck Israel. I think that was enough. I liked Simplicius's article. It kind of sets a geopolitical kind of landscape and touches on a bunch of different things. Go give them a follow. I'll put that. It's simplicius76.substack.com. I'll drop the link in the description and in the Substack afterwards. Oh no, I did have more. Sorry. No, not that. Hind Cowdery. Israel is wiping out everything we ever had. All right. That's another one. All right. And she's there. I tweet what I see and feel.
Yep.
Oh, this was the other one I had to bring. This is another one from Indie Media Award honoree, Sharon Zhang. All right. At Truth Out. Israel abducted a child near Gaza aid site and then tortured him for nearly a month. Unreal. Content warning. This report includes graphic descriptions of torture. Israeli forces abducted a Palestinian child near an aid site in Gaza in June and took him to a notorious prison camp where they subjected him to severe torture for nearly a month. A child rights group has found, adding abduction and imprisonment to a growing list of atrocities reported at Israel's aid sites. On June 29th, Israel had already killed nearly 600 Palestinians near aid sites over the previous month. 16-year-old Omar Nizar Mahmoud Asfour was detained by Israeli forces and taken to State Haman military prison, reports Defense for Children International Palestine, or DCIP. Omar was near an aid distribution site in Gaza when Israeli forces apprehended and abducted him. The Palestinian Center for Human Rights reports that Omar was one of 10 children abducted near a Gaza Humanitarian Foundation site that day and imprisoned. Authorities allegedly held Omar for 26 days, subjecting him to torture, starvation, well, he was already being starved, and solitary confinement. Systemic abuses commonly inflicted on Palestinians at State Haman and other Israeli torture camps. He was never charged with a crime or allowed to meet with legal or humanitarian officials. Sounds a lot like what the fuck is happening here.
Yep.
Israeli forces have been conducting near-daily massacres near aid distribution sites since Gaza Humanitarian Foundation began operating in Gaza on May 27th, killing over 1,400 Palestinians this way as of August 1st. Over 850 of these killings were near Gaza GHF sites, and hundreds of others were killed en route to the food distribution hubs. It's gross. These massacres have been widely reported. Less widely known is that Israeli forces have repeatedly abducted Palestinians near aid GHF sites, human rights groups have said. Some of the tens of thousands of Palestinians from Gaza and the occupied West Bank who've been kidnapped and imprisoned since the beginning of Israel's genocide, including at least hundreds of children. At least hundreds of children. Imagine that were your kid. Omar shared his experiences with DCIP. He said he's still experiencing trauma from his detention, which he was released from on July 24th. Thank goodness. Quote, the memories of my detention plague my nights, and often I awaken to the sound of my own screams as if I were still confined within those walls. The nightmares are relentless, and every time I shut my eyes, the same faces and interrogations replay in my mind. This is not going away for him for life, as long as his life continues, until Israel decides they want to murder him, after imprisoning and torturing him. I mean, it's just the worst. Fuck Israel. These cunts, man. Omar was alongside other aid seekers when Israeli forces encircled them, held him at gunpoint, and then forced him and 34 others to strip to their underwear. They were taken to an army site where soldiers allowed children to leave, but then blocked Omar from going with them. He was a child, but I guess he looked taller than the others, so they stopped him. Officers interrogated Omar, but were unsatisfied by his answers, so they brought him to the roof of the building. A hospital in Rafah now used by the IDF as an army base per DCIP. There, they tied him to a rope and hung him upside down off the side of the fucking building.
Like fucking Batman?
At one point, the person interrogating him released more rope, causing Omar to plummet 5 floors, his head stopping about a half meter just before he hit the ground. He said he was suspended this way for 20 minutes. Imagine the blood rushing to your head then. He struggled to breathe. It felt as though I was teetering on the brink of death. These people are already being tortured and starved. Omar was subject to other torture before being taken to the torture prison, State Haman, where Israeli officers blindfolded him and put him in a 1 square meter cage for 3 days straight. Then they took him to a part of the prison known to detainees as the hell section, as if the rest of it wasn't, where they subjected him to yet more torture, including beatings, electric shocks, and sleep deprivation, and later the disco room, a cage-like room where officers play extremely loud music. For a week while detained, Israeli officers...
Where have we seen that before?
Gitmo?
One of, sure. I was thinking of Abu Ghraib, but sure.
For a week while detained, Israeli officers also interrogated Omar about members of his family, beating him when the answers were unsatisfactory. Because you know that, forced confessions under torture certainly hold a lot of weight. No, they don't at all. Since the moment I was released, I've been waking up in a state of fear, he said. My sleep is shallow and fragmented, leaving me unfamiliar with the sensation of true rest. Insomnia is a silent killer, and the exhaustion I feel is not merely physical, it penetrates my very soul, as if the ordeal of detention has merely transformed rather than concluded. Fuck Israel. Most humane military in the world, right? Only democracy in the Middle East.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
Only democracy in the Middle East, right, everyone? These motherfuckers. These motherfuckers. Cunts, as Kieran
Your continued
Pine.
existence is a mockery of morality.
That's a great movie. I think there was just the anniversary of Pogba
you
in
remember
the theaters.
what happens right after that, right?
I do. That's
what I'm wanting.
That's in the movie conference room.
Go get Matt Damon. Matt Damon.
You didn't say God bless you. Yes. Agreed, KYE. Yes, they did, Steve Gill. I didn't want to bring that. They blew up a little girl heaving a water jug.
I know.
I couldn't. I couldn't. Sadistic fucks. Yes, they are. Good to see Ryan Bradley. That's fucking wild, but that's their MO when it comes to the prisons they have. As fucked as it is to say, I'm sure they assaulted him in other ways. Yeah, they probably did. Oh, man. Well, we're certainly not going to be remonetized by YouTube for that one. You better. Although there is a channel that is monetized over there. You go to youtube.com/@indie@INN, but don't do that. No, do it over here. Go do it at Cash App, $ Indie News Network, over at co-fi.com/Indie News Network.
Money, please.
At paypal.me/Indie News Network. Okay, you've got IndieNewsNow.com, where we have a website where you can check out the news and watch this show live, all the INN shows. And then at Substack at INNnewsletter.com and at IndieMediaToday.com, both. All right. Hunt count is now Noof, the genocidal swine. Yes, that's nice.
9.
That's right. We 9. I love you all. Take care of each other. Support independent media because we really need it more than ever. And I'll see you soon. Love you all. Have a good night, everyone.
We are party. Mwah. Ciao, baby.
No! We just fucking lost the stream.
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days, and I still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to make, but God, it's so hard to say. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe? Were you safe?
Who are these people?
This one's another unbelievable story. Unbelievable. We're going to go to another Indie Media Award honoree at Declassified UK. You can't really see it there. Their logo's darked out because we're in a dark thing. That's declassifieduk.org. All right. Indie Media Award honoree, initial class. This is Ian Overton. The U.S. flew spy flights for UK months before the Ministry of Defense admitted it, which, again, we've known for a while. Matt Kennard has been reporting on this for quite a while. All right.
Matthew.
And Declassified is continuing his work of tracking this. So he says, this one, Ian says, a U.S. military contractor hired by Britain to conduct surveillance over Gaza operated above Nuseirat refugee camp the night before an Israeli bombing killed over 30 Palestinians in December of 2024. First question, why is the UK hiring a U.S. military contractor to conduct this surveillance? They don't have enough of their own equipment, planes?
I can't tell you that.
Planes and pilots? And this literally is the flight path of the plane. A U.S. Beechcraft surveillance aircraft. You know what a Beechcraft is? That's like a little two-seater, like a prop engine plane. Circling Nuseirat refugee camp in Gaza less than 24 hours before Israel's deadly airstrike. On the evening of December 12th of last year, 2024, Israel bombed the Nuseirat refugee camp in central Gaza without warning. A post office sheltering displaced families was hit. Nearby houses were shredded. More than 30 Palestinians were killed and over 50 were wounded. Entire families died. Their names posted online within minutes. Declassified can now reveal that a spy plane owned by a U.S. contractor to whom the RAF is outsourcing its spy flights circled over Nuseirat refugee camp the night before the bombing. How do we know this? Publicly available flight tracking data show that in the hours before the blast and again afterwards, 2 surveillance aircraft operating from RAF Akrotiri, we've reported on that base before, Britain's military base on Cyprus, where a lot of Israelis are escaping to before Bibi closed the borders. All right, circled close to or directly over Gaza. One of these was a RAF Shadow R1, all right, literally has the registration number there. That's a surveillance plane that flew towards Gaza in mid-afternoon before vanishing from public tracking near the territory. Amazeballs how they could just turn off their transponders. They're not supposed to be able to do that, by the way. But the other belonged to Straight Flight Nevada Commercial Leasing, LLC, a subsidiary of America's Sierra Nevada Corporation. This was a Beechcraft Super King Air 350 with the registration tail of N6125 and the call sign Crook 11. I think that if you looked into the registry of that plane, you might find an Adelson somewhere connected because they have a lot of stuff in Las Vegas. That would be my guess. That's total speculation. And maybe
Beechcraft Super King Air.
Maybe
is what it was, right?
Yes, and maybe, just maybe, Declassified will mention that here. The presence of this U.S. aircraft alongside Royal Air Force spy planes raises uncomfortable questions about whether British intelligence directly or indirectly assisted Israel's targeting of the camp. Of course they did! Are you fucking kidding me? Come on. Further, the presence of the U.S. contractor over Gaza, and who is that contractor? We know who the plane owner is. Right? That's the leasing company that owns the plane, but we don't know who the contractor was. The presence of raised uncomfortable questions about whether they assisted the targeting. There's Reef putting the plane up on his screen, Captain. Yeah, it's tiny. It's a two-engine. It's a two-engine prop. All right.
Right.
Further, the presence of the U.S. contractor over Gaza as early as December of 2024 appears to contradict the Ministry of Defense's claim that the company was only hired to take over the missions in recent weeks due to strain on the RAF's Shadow R1 fleet. Bullshit. The Ministry of Defense insists the flights were unarmed. Yes, they were just surveillance flights and solely related to hostage rescue. Again, surveillance flights that they can claim they were looking for Hamas, and denies aiding Israel's prosecution of the war, which is bullshit. But there is no known mechanism to ensure that data shared with the Israeli authorities is not repurposed for attacks in serious violation of international humanitarian law. How about that? On December 11th, 2024, Crook 11 left Akrotiri at 8:14 UTC p.m., arriving in Gaza at around 9:10. Takes about an hour to fly that little thing. It orbited above Nuseirat for around 20 minutes. Its fixed track consisted with detailed optical or signal surveillance before heading back to Cyprus, switching off its transponder en route at 10:17 p.m. UTC and landing shortly after.
Cam.
Right. That's exactly what it is. It's the cops turning off their body cams, which you should not be allowed to do. The following day, the RAF Shadow ZZ-419 left Akrotiri at 3:05 p.m., went dark near Gaza, and reappeared less than an hour before the bombing. Go figure. Crook 11 then on the 12th took off at 7:08 p.m., and then, right, which social media reports suggest coincided with the time Israel began to bomb Nuseirat. The plane then held its position just off Gaza's coast for around half an hour and was circling near Gaza less than an hour after the bombing. They were surveying the damage on behalf of Israel. Such timing lends weight to concerns that surveillance may have been shared with Israel, and used for target selection. May have been. Under Article 16 of the International Law Commission's draft articles on state responsibility, which they don't give a shit about, providing intelligence of clear military utility that's employed in an unlawful attack could expose Britain to liability as a party to the conflict. Yeah, that's the needle hole that you need to go through. The eye of that needle that you need to thread.
Stop! You violated the law.
Because we don't have enough support yet, right? Enough violations of international law to prosecute them.
Right.
The UK's Investigatory Powers Commission's office, that sounds draconian as shit, which oversees UK public authorities such as the intelligence agencies, refused to tell Declassified whether it had even reviewed intelligence sharing from these missions, citing its exemption from such disclosures under the FOIA. How convenient. Britain has now conducted more than 600 surveillance flights over Gaza since October of 2023, according to analysis by the London-based research charity Action on Armed Violence. The Ministry of Defense admits that by mid-2025, the RAF's small shadow fleet of surveillance aircraft was strained, prompting the hiring of Straight Flight Nevada to provide an equivalent platform. Straight Flight Nevada has got to be CIA or Mossad connected, 100%.
You would think.
The planes are owned and crewed by the contractor, but operated from Akrotiri and perform the same recon roles as the RAF's own aircraft. It gives them
work for the CIA?
It gives them plausible deniability over anything that happens, too. The arrangement first became public last month after a mishap spotted by journalists at Palestine Deep Dive. A Beechcraft with a call sign of Crook 12 failed to disable its transponder while circling over Khan Yunis. I'm going to have that with Matt Kennard in a second. This showed for the first time that contractor-flown aircraft were operating over Gaza. Senior British military figures confirmed the U.S. hiring U.S. contractors for the Gaza flights. I don't understand how that can in any way be legal. Declassified's finding shows that the arrangement has been of much longer standing and that the Ministry of Defense hired the contractor months before previously believed. Flight tracking data show that a Beechcraft belonging to the U.S. contractor with a different registration arrived at Akrotiri on December 5th of 2024, having flown from Hagerstown, Maryland, via St. John's, Reykjavik, and Palermo, Sicily. This was at a time when 4 of the RAF's 5 Shadows were operational, a fact that cast doubt on the Ministry of Defense claim that the outsourcing was purely to cover for aircraft undergoing maintenance. No, they were providing some kind of support as well. And they were allowing Israel to now monitor via that contractor directly and not have to go through the British Ministry of Defense that may not have wanted to share all of the overflight information. This was again at a time when, Ministry of Defense also refuses to disclose the cost or duration of its contract with Straight Flight Nevada, citing operational sensitivity? What? How does it matter how much it costs having to do with operational sensitivity, except that when you find out how much they're paying, you're going to want to shut it the fuck down? The December 12th bombing was not the only lethal incident preceded by British-linked surveillance flights. Of course not. On June 8th of last year, Israeli forces attacked Nusrat in a raid to free 4 hostages, killing more than 270 Palestinians and injuring hundreds. In the 2 weeks prior to that, the RAF had flown 24 missions over or near Gaza. The Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights later concluded the raid may amount to a war crime. May. Defense Minister Luke Pollard later confirmed that the UK had shared intelligence with relevant authorities in relation to hostage rescue, but declined to say whether this information had been used in the Nusrat raid, citing operational security and desire to cover his own ass from being charged with war crimes. Foreign Secretary douchebag David Lammy has come under fire for obfuscating the role of the spy planes, for which the Ministry of Defense had previously confirmed information relating to hostage rescues passed to the relevant Israeli authorities. Bro, they have hacked all of your shit and they're seeing it before your guys do. I hate to tell you, fuckers. Cunts. What Lamy, of course, has not addressed is how intelligence sharing carries inherent risks. As Parliament's Intelligence and Security Committee has noted, data can be repurposed for entirely different ends, sometimes unlawful ones. And that would make David Lammy personally liable. I hope he's brought up on charges at The Hague. We know he won't be, but he should be. Once handed over, Britain can't dictate or monitor the use of intelligence. The government insists it takes careful steps to control what information is shared with Israel, but without further elaboration. While being questioned over the flights in July 2025 on BBC Radio, that's, of course, propaganda for Israel, Lammy said, quote, "It would be quite wrong for the British government to assist in the prosecution of this war in Gaza. We are not doing that. I would never do that." You're a fucking liar. You're a fucking liar. Still, the spy flights have prompted sharp criticism. Really? Liberal Democrat defense spokesperson Helen Maguire has urged ministers to explain what safeguards prevent UK-sourced intelligence from being abused in Israeli operations. Absolutely nothing. Nothing, folks. I've got nothing. Jeremy Corbyn has called flights utterly indefensible during a live-streamed genocide around the world. One senior military source told The Times, "Instead of sending a message to Israel that we aren't going to do surveillance for you, we're happy to hire an American company and pay for it, so that we don't have access to the data and we can claim that we didn't do it. We'll just let you use our bases and provide all kinds of support so that you can do it." In December of 2024, an Amnesty International report urged states such as the UK to halt military and security assistance to Israel in light of the clear risk of enabling serious violations of international law. And the UK summarily wiped their ass with that report. Or wiped their arse, actually. Despite such warnings, that same month, Prime Minister Kid Starver, a.k.a. Keir Starmer, told personnel at Akrotiri that, quote, "quite a bit of what goes on here can't necessarily be talked about. We can't tell the world what you're doing here," unquote, "because they would charge us all with war crimes and send us to The Hague for life." He should be in The Hague because of what he did to fucking Julian Assange, tearing up his notes. Secrecy and suspicion. So, for those in Nusrat on December 12th, the sequence was brutally simple. The hum of an aircraft, hours later the shockwave of bombs, then the digging for survivors. Far from afar, the picture is less clear but equally troubling. The government maintains that no British citizens remain among the hostages in Gaza, raising further doubts over the stated rationale for the flights. Why is the UK supporting this then? Civil society groups argue that the missions should be suspended until Israel ends its campaign of mass bombardment, siege and starvation, which it never will. Declassified asked the Ministry of Defense whether the Beechcraft flights in December were directed or coordinated by the UK. The department didn't deny it and told Declassified that the flights are unarmed, solely for locating the hostages, which again is a lie, and that the UK controls what intelligence is shared with Israel, except when it's coming from a private US contractor, limiting it to hostage rescue information, which of course is also bullshit. You can guarantee that they were targeting cell signals for journalists that they were executing. No further details could be given for operational security reasons, because everyone wanted to cover their own ass. Campaigners are now calling for a full public inquiry into Britain's military collaboration with Israel, which you will never get. The Gaza Tribunal, convened by Corbyn's team, promises to, quote, uncover the truth about the UK's role and potential complicity in genocide. They've done these tribunals before. Any investigation by international courts into alleged war crimes will likely examine the part played by contractor-flown aircraft like those of Straight Flight Nevada. In the meantime, the transponders have been turned off, the flight paths have been made invisible, and Britain's role in Gaza's skies and perhaps its ruins remains hidden behind officialdom. Except for this. Where's the one from Matt? All right. Keir Starmer secretly privatized UK spy flights going over Gaza to Israel. He got busted. But now he's refusing to say how much the contract is costing the British taxpayer. We're paying a U.S. company to participate in genocide, and we're not even allowed to know how much. There's the flight path of the guy who fucked up. But there's another tweet I've got here, and I guess it's inside this electronic intifada section, which I know.
You're watching the.
Hold on, starts at 10 minutes and 17 seconds. Let's watch this. Matt Kennard talk to Asa Winstanley and Nora Barrows-Friedman of EI. Okay.
20 months of these flights, every single time you look at them online, they turn their transponder off over the sea on their way to Gaza. So we never have known what they're doing over Gaza. So this was the first evidence we have of what they were doing. And I think it's important evidence that should be part of a legal case, to be totally honest with you. Yeah, it's up on the screen now. So they were over, and it was over Khan Yunis for 3 hours in the Khan Yunis area. There was a airstrike which killed civilians the following day.
This is a real breakthrough in the story because huge. I mean, you mentioned these gifs you've been of the flight paths you've been posting over the last nearly 2 years to your Twitter about this, but until now they always stop just short of Gaza. That's correct, exactly. Right?
Yeah,
exactly. This is the first time due to this kind of effective privatization of these spy flights to a US contractor.
Exactly.
It seems they accidentally left their transponder on over Gaza itself.
Yeah, exactly. So the story developed because obviously we contacted the Ministry of Defense and said, what's going on? Why is there a contracted plane? They didn't give it even on the record statement. They gave no information. I contacted the US Department of Defense. They referred me to the UK Ministry of Defense, and I contacted the company who didn't respond. So we had very little information about who was operating and what had happened to the program. But we had noticed it. We tracked where this plane, the new US spy plane, had been, and we saw that it had left the US, an airport called Hagerstown Regional Airport in Maryland. On the 12th of July, it had gone to Iceland, then Northern Ireland, and Canada, and then Sicily, and then Akrotiri. It was a 3-day trip. And then we saw from the 20th of July to the 25th of July that it actually went on its missions over Gaza with the RAF plane. So it was obviously a training exercise. So, but in the article, we speculated about who could be operating. I thought it might be the Americans or the Israelis or even the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Anyone can be these clients. But anyway, it became a big story because I tweeted that video on Monday. It got over 3 million views on Twitter, over 1 million on Instagram, and for the first time, a mainstream journalist got interested in the story. And there was an article in the Times yesterday. There's been 2 this week, 2 very big breakthrough articles. Sorry, Tom.
Well, let me take you through some of that because I've got some of the quotes from that lined up. So, as you mentioned, you published this information on Twitter, and then, you published your full article, your scoop for Palestine Deep Dive on Monday. And this appears, as you've said, to have finally hammered a crack in this kind of wall of silence that the British media has really erected since these surveillance missions over Gaza first started flying in December 2023, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So on Tuesday, then we saw finally a mainstream newspaper in Britain, the Times of London, and they reported on your story effectively without really crediting you at first, and they wrote, quote, "The British military is continuing to fly spy planes over Gaza to help Israel find missing hostages as Palestinian civilians are starved and killed." government sources have confirmed to the Times. So they're back, they're confirming your reporting. It continues, intelligence gathered by undisclosed RAF aircraft and other British assets in the region is being handed over to the Israeli military. So it has real-time information on the movement of captured Israelis, end of quote. So, I know that when you asked them for comment, Matt, the Ministry of Defence refused to comment. So it's highly significant, I think, that a mainstream media source has finally and belatedly confirmed this.
Can I just say something about that quote as well? Because there's two major breakthroughs in that line that you read out. So as I mentioned, up till now, the government has said, we only give them to, it's only hostage rescue and we only give them to relevant authorities. They would never say what it is. Government sources told the Times in that FARCE article, number one, that they're handing it to the Israeli military. Number two, that they're doing it in real time because the Shadow R1 spy plane can do that. One of its capabilities is it can send the intelligence to the ground while it's in the sky. So this should be evidence in a war crimes trial because that they purposefully not told us it's the Israeli military, although we obviously knew that it would be. But the fact they're doing it in real time and the point they always say, which is that it's hostage rescue, right, is insane because if you're handing this intelligence in real time to the Israeli military, how can you then say to them, well, you can't use it for anything else apart from hostage rescue? They don't know where it's going when it's in Israel. It's like as if Israel's a trusted party in anything, let alone using intelligence in the way they're telling the British. So it's but as I say, the whole program is unraveling, which is beautiful to see because it's only been upheld by secrecy and the fact there's been no scrutiny by the mainstream media. And now both those things have been smashed. And that article was very important because that article was kind of a reaction to our piece in a way because we left open the question of who were operating these flights. And actually the fact that it was the UK that would be subcontracted out was low down my list of possibilities because it still doesn't make sense to me. Why would you need, they've got 8 of these Shadow R1 planes, right? And they've been doing it for 20 months. And then suddenly they decide, oh, we're going to subcontract it out to a US company. My hunch is knowing now that they did do that is that they did it to conceal the program more because they were coming under increasing heat. The first time a minister has ever been asked about them, which is insane by a mainstream journalist, was a couple of weeks ago when David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, was asked on BBC Radio about them. He was asked, he said, are we handing intelligence to the Israeli military? And he said, no. So straight lied.
Yeah, well, we're gonna come on to that, but I'd like to talk about
So, dude, that's again admitted war crimes. It looks like things are moving and progressing toward that. Again, talking about they're paying a U.S. contractor. My guess is that they're paying the U.S. contractor because they don't want to see what's happening in the spy flights. They want to provide, they'll provide support, but they don't really want to get their hands dirty with this if they don't have to. Now,
plus, we share all our information anyway, so.
Now, we've talked about Palestine Action, and of course, they no longer exist, but people are still getting arrested for saying they support them, right? The reason Yvette Cooper has proscribed Palestine Action is that she's a member of Labor Friends of Israel and received £215,000 from the Zionist lobby, which incidentally is £215,000 more than Palestine Action ever received on behalf of a foreign power. Government ministers are lying to you. So I wanted to point that out about the UK. Fuck the UK, fuck Israel, fuck all these lies and nonsense smears to support genocide. So, that was the long spy flight segment. So I love you all. Take care of each other. Support independent media because we really need it more than ever. And I'll see you soon. Love you all. Have a good night, everyone.
We are party. Mwah. Ciao, baby.
No! We just fucking lost the stream.
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days, and I still think you're right here away.
these people?
Now, I also wanted to get into London. Oh my goodness. This is some crazy shit here. Now, again, not always the biggest fan of these people, but this guy does some pretty good stuff. The people who hung this banner outside Labour headquarters have been arrested and will face trial in the UK in January. These are the extreme Orwellian measures that Western governments must take to normalize Israel's genocide and war crimes. Ready for this? Yep. They dropped a banner across a building. Yep, they draped a banner across scaffolding.
Well, clearly that's violence, Indy. Clearly that's violence.
I think this might even be the street that
banners are violence.
That Dr. Hossam Abu Safia walked down to climb into that tank. It feels like right about there. I remember that footage like it was yesterday. But they got prosecuted for hanging this fucking banner. It's so far over the top draconian.
It could be easily fucking taken down. Someone's like, okay.
Yep.
Like, zero destruction of property.
All right. But worse, this is a 2-minute and 20-second video of a retired male nurse in London who was arrested for holding a sign. And let's check this one out. Before we do that, let's go to switching slideshow office. Okay.
Do you have a message?
I'm being arrested for holding up a placard which says, I oppose genocide and I support Palestine action. This isn't just about Palestine action. This is about freeing the British legal system from the oppression of the Zionist lobby. I've witnessed the genocide in Palestine, and that is what this is really about. This is really about covering up the genocide. Thank you very much. This is about the British government covering up a genocide, a blatant genocide of nearly 6 million beautiful Muslim people. We need to free up our country from the oppression of the Zionist lobby. Neoliberal capitalism is the biggest threat the world has ever seen.
They tried to scrub this whole video off the internet, by the way.
I oppose genocide and I support Palestine action. In their actions to bring the world's awareness and to stop the genocide in Palestine. 5 times I worked in Palestine as an emergency medic, 4 times in Gaza. I was in Gaza in the last Nakba. I witnessed things there after 30 years of work in emergency. I witnessed things in Gaza that broke me as a man. And the people of Palestine put me back together. They are warm, welcoming, hospitable Muslim people. They're a strong, resilient people. And this is not being done in my name. We need to free Britain from the oppression of the Zionist lobby. We need to free Britain from the oppression of neoliberal capitalism. Britain isn't Britain anymore. Britain is an owned country. When it comes to a point where they're arresting emergency medics and arresting retired medics and doctors for holding up a piece of paper with words on it, whereas they sell weapons that kill people from outer space. I've seen drones burning children in their beds, and they were provided by this country, no other country. They were British made. This is a proxy British Americano genocide.
Absolutely.
Good for you, dude.
Dude, hearing it right from the mouth of a guy.
My boy, Blue.
Lee Evans, okay? He's been there in the trenches. And you're going to deny him the right to speak? Fuck you. Fuck Israel for that. And
fuck you. Fuck Britain.
Just to show how captured they are, again, we go back to Indie Media Award honoree Declassified UK. You can't see the logo there, but it's there. All right, John McAvoy, who's one of the managing editors now. And this was from June 25th of last year, just to remind people how Israel funds the UK parliamentary staff. So they've infiltrated, folks. Right? Israel has paid for at least a dozen UK parliamentary staff to visit the country on special delegations in the last 5 years. A further 18 staffers have accepted funding or hospitality from pro-Israel lobby organizations in Britain, such as Labor Friends of Israel and We Believe in Israel. Several worked for MPs in Keir Starmer's front bench team, including Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves, Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting, and Shadow Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson. I believe Rachel Reeves now may be Home Secretary. Our investigation found how the Israeli embassy in London, its Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and associated lobby groups seek to influence not only members of parliament, but also their assistants, because those are the people that actually get the work done. Declassified previously revealed that 1 in 4 British MPs in the last parliament accepted funding from pro-Israel lobby groups or individuals. So it's not just happening here. And I didn't even realize that they were allowed to buy off staff like that. That was legal. Like, it's illegal for a foreign government, technically, to pay off a lawmaker here, so they whitewash it through American companies. All right, but apparently they can just fund stuff for staffers. The Israeli embassy in London funded 10 staff members of Tory MPs to visit Israel and a young conservative political leaders delegation in 2022. They worked for MPs such as Stephen Crabb, Nicola Richards, and Bob Blackman, all of whom are closely associated with conservative Friends of Israel. No surprise. Again, all these lobbying groups are just paying this money.
Labor Friends of Israel.
No. Although they basically serve the same purpose. One of the staffers, Simon Phipps, is now a conservative candidate for Birmingham Selly Oak. The trip involved meeting with government officials and businesses in Israel as part of a UK delegation. The visit was declared in an obscure parliamentary database called the Register of Interests of Members, Secretaries, and Research Assistants. It contains little information about what the staffers did in Israel or who they met. All data prior to 2018 has been destroyed in line with official regulations. How convenient. Okay, so this is an interesting story. I just wanted to bring that because it went back a little bit, but it's important. Here's the European Leadership Network. That's another organization that brought people to Israel. ELNet was funded by Dov Foreman, a staffer for Tory MP Robert Jenrick, to go on a solidarity trip to Israel amid the genocidal war on Gaza. Whitewashing trip. All right. Another funders, We Believe in Israel. Yeah. Again, this is last year, and they're still doing this shit. So again, I wanted to go back and bring that up in Declassified to point out some of the ways that they were buying off British lawmakers then. Now, on a positive note, you have this Irish writer, God bless the Irish, Sally Rooney, another one who says, I support Palestine action. If this makes me a supporter of terror under UK law, so be it. She also announced that she was going to donate the proceeds from her book to funding and supporting Palestine action. Terrorism used to be when you killed people. Now terrorism is when you try to stop people being killed. Ayuba Ahmad, you should definitely follow him too. And then finally, Professor David Miller wrote this article. This is a really short one, but he's been calling out Jeremy Corbyn. Oh, Jeremy Corbyn.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Why didn't somebody tell me that my screen was messed up? Here, let's turn the slideshow back on. There you go.
I don't know.
I didn't notice that till just now. You saw the rest of my screen there, folks. All right.
You're right.
David Miller wrote this article. Now, your party is the new thing that's emerging that was co-founded by Zara Sultana, who left the Labour Party, and Jeremy Corbyn. And they're trying to get together a group, and allegedly they have over 300,000 people who have pledged their support, or 3 million. They're bigger than the Labour Party right now. So David Miller's been looking into exactly what their policies are going to be. Are they just going to be like a neoliberal light? because Corbyn has had issues, especially on two-state solution. So he says, I'm told that your party has now named 7 members in a presumably interim executive committee. He says, I'm able to share the names and the official positions of 3 of the 7, which are listed in the internal documents. They are Amy Jackson, once a political secretary at LOTO and Unite's director of politics, now head of executive team. Well, what's Unite? We'll get to that in a minute. Harry Murphy, ex-chief of staff at LOTO. What is LOTO? We'll get to that. Forced out after shenanigans with John McDonnell, now back in charge of conference and event planning. Again, this is electoral stuff, but they're trying to form a third party. What's happening is that this is the same tried and failed incompetent clique that brought down the first Corbyn project. Out of cowardice, they capitulated to the Board of Deputies and the Israel lobby last time, believing in a two-state solution. Specifically, this guy, James Schneider. All right, he worked for
Schneider.
Yeah, he worked for LOTO, but also Progressive International and the Peace and Justice Project. Who's he married to? Keir Starmer's press secretary. Now we know that Keir Starmer undermined Corbyn and smeared him with that entire called him an anti-Semite for standing up for Palestine, even though Corbyn tepidly supports a two-state solution, though he has been strongly in support of the Palestinian people. But being married to Keir Starmer's press secretary and working under Corbyn's new party, that's inviting the snake into your garden. He was central to the disastrous labor push to accept the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism against the will of the members and to the strategy of apologizing and throwing anti-Zionists under the bus. His new title is a mouthful. Comms inclusive of mainstream media, social media, speechwriter, spokesperson, supporter comms. That's everything. That's the entire message is on this guy's shoulders. They betrayed the will of the mass membership and turbocharged the witch hunt. Now history risks repeating. They're trying to get this. This reminds me of Jeff Weaver joining Bernie Sanders' campaign in 2020, right? Of the Foxes joining the Hen House, of Peter Dow joining the Marianne Williamson campaign in 2024. All right. They're sending their known hatchet men. For some reason, Corbyn and whoever is accepting these fucking morons. All right. And David Miller is standing up and trying to tag these people and be like, what are you doing? A handful of tried and tested failures could once again squander a movement of 800,000 decent Britons. But that's their whole intent now, isn't it? It's essential.
That's the plan.
It's essential that anyone who has a voice in this process intervenes now to ensure that the whole project is not strangled at birth by the same team that hung thousands of anti-Zionist labor members out to dry last time and capitulated to the Zionist movement. And he's tagging the leaders of this new Your Party, YP. YP also is your problem. So that's not so much that I like, but okay. So again, we likely will not be remonetized by YouTube for calling out the Corbyn party for not being pro-Palestine enough and for potentially allowing a pro-Keir Starmer snake in their garden. So if you're able to and have means, please help fund the media you want to see elsewhere by doing so at Cash App, $, Indie News Network. We can do so at Ko-fi.com/Indie News Network. A couple of people have done that already tonight. You can do that at paypal.me/Indie News Network. You can do that at IndieNewsNow.com under Keep the Media Free, and that goes right to our Stripe. We can do that over at Substack at IndieMediaToday.com. You can subscribe on a monthly or an annual basis. All right. And you can subscribe at INNNewsletter.com. Totally separate newsletter with totally different content. Although I am now sharing some older INN newsletter content to Indie Media Today subscribers this week because I realize most of the people there had not subscribed and had never seen these articles. So I'm resharing them with a different audience to give it some new life. Specifically, the pieces about breaking points, and even the segment that I did last year with Colin on INN News about the infiltration of independent media by corporate media, and citing many different examples there of what we're talking about. Love you all. Thank you so much for everybody who's here tonight. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. I truly believe that. And we'll see you soon. I love you all. Have a great night, everyone.
We go party. Mwah. Ciao, baby.
No! We just fucking lost the stream!
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days, and I still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to make, but God, it's so hard to say. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe? Were you safe?
Who are these people?
Fuck Israel. Do you want to hit the theme song? Do we have a theme song this week for Fuck Israel? Hey, fuck Israel! All right. I debated whether to even show this video or not. It's pretty graphic. Journalist Mossab Abu Toha, I'm devastated. I wish I had never seen this video. I wish I never had to share it. This footage is from an airstrike on civilians walking down a street in Gaza City a few hours ago. On the right, two people lie motionless, heads split open. On the left, three others. One is dead beside his bicycle, while the other two writhe in panic, their hands flailing in terror. Inside a tent, one wants a simple charging station for phones. Two people are still clinging to life. This isn't war, this is terrorism. Again, I debated whether to bring this, but you know what? Israel's doing it, so we kind of need to show it, I feel like.
يلا تعال بالتصوير يا عمي اللي عايز شاهد يا عمي.
This is what our bombs and weapons are doing over there. Yeah, we'll probably get this locked out for showing some graphic stuff, but I think it's important for people to see. We are responsible for this, in part. We are responsible for this. Ali Amoro says Israel is slaughtering Palestinians in Gaza right now. Israeli forces are pushing into Gaza City, advancing through Zaytun and Jabalia, with 60,000 more troops mobilized. 60,000! Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians are being driven from their homes under siege, with no escape, no food, and no safety. This is a mass slaughter of a trapped and starving people. Fucking horrible. Fuck Israel.
Yep.
All right. So I got this article out of Jason Hickel, who asks the obvious and silly question, why does the U.S. support Israel's crimes? Well, it's because we're implicated, but it's still a really silly question that seems obvious. Why does the U.S. support Israel's genocidal crimes against the Palestinian people, even in the face of overwhelming international condemnation at massive expense and to the point of totally debasing the very frameworks of human rights and international law that it pretends to uphold? Like, everything that we claim that we believe in is being thrown to the wolves here. People fall back on narratives about the power of AIPAC in U.S. elections and other forms of Israeli political interventions in the U.S., like Beitar and like Zionists of America. That's a J Street. That's a real force and can't be ignored, but the reality is that the U.S. ruling class broadly supports Israel's actions with bipartisan consensus because they see this as aligned with the interests of U.S. capitalism. And capitalism. Right, and most other Western governments, Britain, Germany, etc., hold the same position for much the same reason. The important thing to understand is that the capitalist economy is a world system where growth and accumulation in the imperial core, e.g. U.S. and Western Europe, relies heavily on the appropriation of cheap labor and resources from the periphery and semi-periphery, or the global south. Western states and firms need southern states to remain subordinated suppliers of cheap labor, raw materials, and consumer goods within global commodity chains. And not just global south in the West, in South America, but also in Africa, in Australia, in China, in India, in Indonesia,
China,
in Taiwan, in the Philippines. In order to maintain this arrangement, the core states, well, that's South America, right? The core states must find ways to suppress sovereign economic development in the South. Oh, Brazil, Argentina. Sovereign development means Southerners begin to escape their subordination, produce more for themselves, increase their wages, and consume their own output. Evo Morales was all about that. This makes resources and inputs more expensive for the core, which constrains their consumption and makes it more difficult for them to realize profits. Hit me with a Ferengi thing, because that's what this is all about. Fucking straight up greed.
Okay.
For the wealthiest motherfuckers on the planet already.
And a Ferengi without profit.
It's no Ferengi at all.
An American without profit apparently is no American at all either. This is the key point.
Yep.
Economic sovereignty in the periphery threatens capital accumulation in the core. To avoid this, the core states must constantly intervene to prevent or crush any movement or government in the periphery that seeks national liberation and economic sovereignty. When you start looking at it through that lens, things make a lot more sense, let me tell you. The U.S. started to support the Zionist project in the 1960s because they saw this as a way to have a military proxy in the Middle East where they could stage counter-revolutionary interventions against the Arab social movements and national liberation struggles that were gaining traction at the time. The U.S. could not accept the prospect of sovereign development. Go ahead.
There was a general, right? What was the general? He said, we're going to go, he got a paper on his desk, we're going to go bomb 7 countries.
Well, that was Wesley Clark in 2001.
That was it.
2002. But he's talking about in the 60s that the U.S. couldn't accept the prospect of a sovereign development in the region. The liberation movements had to be crushed or destabilized, and they used Israel to help them do it, even back in the 60s. Israel has been instrumental in assassinating liberation leaders in the Arab region and interfering in the political processes of the Arab countries to prevent nationalist and socialist parties from coming to power. They want to keep that in the religious kind of dictatorships. That's what they prefer. All right. So where do we go? I lost my spot. It has long It has a long history of attacking the regional states. I clicked the wrong button. The regional states, Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, Jordan, Egypt, Yemen, etc. Half of them are being bombed right now, destabilizing them and forcing them to divert resources toward defensive spending instead of industrial development. On top of the fact that they take out the infrastructure and they're forced to pay to rebuild that. This is in full alignment with U.S. strategy. Not only in the Middle East, Israel has a long history of providing military and intelligence support to right-wing regimes around the world. For example, Israel armed and supported Argentina's U.S.-backed military junta, which murdered 30,000 socialists and political dissidents. Yes, we did that too. And Israel armed and assisted the U.S.-backed genocide in Guatemala, training military cadres in techniques of torture and ethnic cleansing. They train our cops too. The U.S. supports Israel for the exact same reasons that they've backed the plotters of assassinations and coups against liberation leaders across the global south since the 50s, which deposed Mossadegh in Iran and Lumumba in Democratic Republic of Congo, and Nkrumah in Ghana, Allende in Chile, and Arbenz in Guatemala, and on and on and on. They do it for the same reason they invaded Vietnam, destroyed Libya, and imposed sanctions on Cuba. It's the same pattern with the same objectives. Again, start looking at it through that lens, it becomes very clear. This is why, one reason why Israel is so despised around the world. Not only because they're hell-bent on ethnically cleansing Palestine, but because they intervene everywhere to crush popular movements and create chaos and instability, and this is intolerable. Again, that's in partnership with the United States. But yes. So Israel is not an ally of the U.S. in the conventional sense of the term. It's a proxy force, an attack dog, a partner. This relationship is particularly useful to the U.S. because it allows them to have a degree of distance from their actions and plausible deniability. The U.S. can send weapons to Israel and directly coordinate military strategy with them, then claim it's not responsible for the violence and destruction and war crimes that Israel perpetrates in the region. Literally exactly what we just saw in Gaza City. We gave them those weapons. We sold them those weapons. Help the military plan. We were doing the spy flights. We showed the spy flights last week. That there was a private U.S. outfit that's running Beechcraft spy flights over Khan Yunis on behalf of the British government. The core states use South Africa in the same way. The key reason that Western powers supported the apartheid regime in South Africa, also against overwhelming international condemnation, was because it served as a highly militarized Western colonial outpost that was geared to run up against counterinsurgency operations, not only within South Africa against the ANC and Communist Party. Remember, the U.S. listed Mandela as a terrorist until 2008, but also in Angola, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Namibia, the Democratic Republic of Congo, etc., causing immense violence and chaos. Yes, we destabilize a region by supporting the monsters within it. The vast majority of the world and international law itself supports Palestinian liberation, but the U.S. and its main allies reject this. Why? Because Palestinian liberation would remove a key U.S. proxy and would open the way to liberation movements elsewhere in the region. That's probably the scarier thing. A liberated Palestine means a liberated Middle East, and a liberated Middle East at the hinge of Africa and Asia and Europe is strongly antithetical to the interests of Western capitalism. Right? That's, again... Capitalism. Yes, sir. That's correct. We're protecting capital. That's all we do here. So this is the situation we're in. The Western ruling classes are willing to back obscene violence in Gaza and shred the liberal values they claim to believe in, resulting in the breathtaking displays of hypocrisy, because they want to maintain the conditions for capital accumulation and geopolitical hegemony. This is U.S. policy.
The conditions that the conditions were in.
Yeah. All the hand-wringing by Biden in the previous administration, the discourse about too many innocent lives lost, was all theater designed to diffuse our outrage. Under Trump, the veneer of concern is just gone. Miriam Adelson bought that concern away. You cannot appeal.
Yeah.
You cannot appeal to imperial power in moral terms. The only way the U.S. will stop arming, funding, and propping up the Zionist regime is when it becomes too costly for them to do so. This will come down to the strength of regional political and military opposition, of which, again, we read in the last articles about Ukraine. They were trying to weaken Russia because they are one of the largest political and military oppositions to this. Maybe. Potentially. But they also go along with Zionism in Israel quite often. And Lubavitcher Chabad.
Quite often.
The strength of the Hague Group.
They have entire fucking rabbis in the fucking Azov.
Well, I'm talking about Russia too. But
yeah.
The strength of the Hague Group and the movement for boycotts, divestment, and sanctions. The strength of punitive measures that can be applied by international courts. Except Israel and the U.S. doesn't acknowledge those and is sanctioning them now. All right, so fuck Israel for all of that, for helping the U.S. and CIA destabilize governments. I had two other things, one of which, Jesus, a lot of people have written about this and blame Laura Loomer for this nonsense and calling attention to this, but it wasn't Laura Loomer. It wasn't Laura Loomer that made the decision to block this aid. That was the Trump administration and Stephen Miller and whoever the hell else did it. The Trump admin's halt on medical evacuations from Gaza is a death sentence for Palestinian children. Caitlin Johnstone wrote an article about this. The best way for an injured Palestinian child to get out of Gaza at this point is to mask themselves as an American pedo. All right.
Sure.
The Trump admin's decision
might even be their destiny, if you will.
Heyo. Or a friend named or somebody named, or a friend named Tracy maybe. But the Trump administration's decision to
He's going to hate this segment.
All visitor visas for Palestinians from Gaza, which came after pressure from far right-wing activists, will be a death sentence for children who require life-saving medical treatment. And they've been bringing Palestinian kids here to get treatment, which is the least we can fucking do after providing the weapons and arming and funding the people that did this to them. Right?
Fucking cunts.
Fucking cunts. The U.S. State Department's decision this weekend to halt all visitor visas for people from Gaza, which includes the medical humanitarian visas that have brought injured children to American hospitals, will cost Palestinian lives, of which the State Department does not give a flying fuck. Officials say this process will be subject to a full and thorough review. For a child with infected burns or a deep trauma wound, a pause is a verdict on their life. The freeze did not arise from new intelligence or any novel identification of problems in the temporary visa pathway. It occurred via a social media panic with the circulation of mischaracterized videos of injured children arriving under the care of a U.S. nonprofit being labeled as a security threat, rhetoric amplified by political allies like Marco Rubio. The State Department then announced it was stopping visas while it re-examines procedures, because heaven forbid they came over with their parents and they weren't separated permanently. Because, they don't allow them to ever go back because there's no right of return. The racism and misinformation at the heart of that panic deserve naming. Some have labeled the process of evacuating children with amputations and burns as potentially being linked to terrorism, and even characterized their joyful cries as jihadi chants. That's textbook dehumanization. I don't want to hear George Bush.
Terror. For terrorism.
Take a population, fuck him. Take a population of wounded kids and code them as a
I got 26 seconds of Bush.
That's right.
Terror,
fuck him.
All right.
Fuck him. He's a fucking cunt, too. All right?
Thank you all.
Take a population of wounded kids and code them as a threat to justify exclusion. Many have commented on the chain reaction from such post-the administrative action. The line from a viral smear to a federal policy that blocks chemotherapy, skin grafts, or prosthetics for children should shame us and the speed with which it occurred. It also wildly, go figure, overstates the scale of what's actually happened. Of course it did, because that fucking cunt is a hysterical lunatic. In total, many of the NGOs running these U.S. transfers report a few dozen total children to date, not a flood. Individual city stories have been about 2s and 3s, a pair treated in Dallas, several children welcomed in Boston. This is the opposite of a large-scale pipeline. It's a narrow, highly vetted corridor that exists, because Gaza's health system has been shattered. Of course it has, intentionally. To understand how few make it here, you have to understand the pathway that these people are on. First, a physician in Gaza refers a child for care that no longer exists at home. The case goes to a Ministry of Health committee, then to the WHO for medical triage. Only after receiving hospital issues a formal acceptance, often after weeks of back and forth with surgeons, translated records, and imaging, does the family usually even begin the paper chase. Passports, exit permissions from the Israeli military's coordinator for government activities in the territories. Yeah, the Gestapo. Jordanian clearances when the bridge route is used, U.S. visa appointments, and finally, a WHO-escorted convoy. Each step is a separate queue with its own failures and reversals. A single "not yet" in any queue can kill the case. Like, the stars need to align. I would call this unicorn jumping on a rainbow and landing in a pot of gold, is literally how these kids made it here. And now they just closed that door too. The numbers give us a picture of why this corridor matters. According to WHO and OCHA, as of mid-August, more than 14,800 people in Gaza need urgent medical evacuation outside the Strip. Right now! Since October 2023, about 7,560 patients, okay, including more than 5,200 children, have been medically evacuated abroad, with most of those transfers occurring before Israel's closure of Rafah last year, which made departures far rarer and slower. In fact, a 92% decrease was recorded in successful evacuations thereafter. So they basically halted them. Most of these evacuations happened prior to the closure of the Rafah Gate. You mean the blowing up of the Rafah Gate?
Rafah Gate.
On August 13th, the WHO...
18th closing.
Right? The WHO managed to move 38 patients, 32 of them children, to care options in Belgium, Italy, and Turkey. Not even here. Such operations are far smaller, of course, than the need. Causing the U.S. share of that global effort may look like a minor adjustment from Washington, yet for an injured child in Gaza, it reads as a door slammed shut and probably a death sentence. Because if it was bad enough that they had to be taken here, knowing everybody that's there and still suffering, it's probably pretty fucking bad. American hospitals have long accepted international charity cases. Pediatric centers have taken on many cases from around the world because these are areas where some U.S. teams are among the best in the world and where outcomes can be life-changing and transformative. Except that Israel doesn't want these people's lives to be changed and transformed. They want them dead, right down to a baby. We see these genocidal lunatics talking about it on TV daily. Just go to Twitter and look it up. You can see them. They don't make it a secret. What happens is the Western press tries to whitewash this bullshit and act like this isn't really happening because they know nobody would actually support this nonsense. Now, it's only anti-Palestinian racism and Islamophobia that are preventing U.S. hospitals from playing a similar role with children from Gaza. Other countries and regions have been accepting far more cases than the U.S., just like the refugees that they've been accepting from Palestine. And Gaza, West Bank, we take nobody. Since October 2023, the top 5 referral destinations have been Egypt, the UAE, Qatar, Turkey, and EU countries. How come those Arab states won't take their own in? Remember, that's the narrative that comes in by the Zionists. Well, Egypt, the UAE, Qatar, are Arab nations, aren't they? The cases include children with trauma wounds, patients with cancer, congenital anomalies, cardiovascular issues, and even ophthalmology-related needs. Because you don't have any freaking eye testing equipment anywhere left in Gaza at this point. They blew it all up. The pathway is, in fact, fraught with ethical dilemmas. Children are frequently separated from their caregivers or loved ones. Families are separated or torn apart, as some relatives are denied exit approval, often the men, by Israel, leaving others to stay behind. Also, so they can potentially threaten or torture those people if those people are not returned or monitored or whatever it is that Israel wants. We've met such families and children who've come to the U.S., have heard from their stories and the trauma they've endured, the physical scars and the psychological ones, and the ones that can't even be named. What should happen now is simple. First, immediately reinstate the processing of medical humanitarian visas for children and their companions. Second, we should push towards affirming the right of return for these children. Many families fear never being able to return to Gaza after accepting treatment abroad, with some even choosing to stay in Gaza out of such fears. Third, restoration of medical corridors for Palestinian patients in Gaza to occupied East Jerusalem and the wider occupied West Bank, so that they do not need to leave their country and homeland just for treatment if it is available. Of course, Israel will never allow that. Finally, stop letting demagogues dictate whether a Palestinian child gets to live. The moral bar here is not too high, but apparently that's too high for the U.S. and Israel. How sad that the government in Washington can be spurred by a bad faith tweet to close a lifeline for children. Any shred of decency as Americans should compel us to reopen it. Fuck Israel. Support Mondo Weiss for writing that article. All right. Indie Media Award honoree. They're one of the best outlets that report on Palestine regularly. All right. This was Bilal Irfan and Alyssa Saliga. Okay. This was also another really important story that I wanted to get into. Looks like we're probably not going to have a chance to get to some of this stuff. Wow, we didn't get to London or Venezuela yet. This would be a long show, or I don't know. Maybe we'll pick it up tomorrow night.
Whatever.
Reuters journalists accusing the Newswire, their own company, of pro-Israel bias? Yeah, how about that? All right, so this comes out of another Indie Media Award honoree, Declassified UK. They've restaffed, and they're doing some great work right now. And they have an exclusive here. Insiders at the world's largest news agency reveal their battles with management over covering Palestine. I don't know how much they've even really battled, but they've actually gone public with it. So that tells me that it's been an issue. So it says that when Israel assassinated Palestinian journalist Anas al-Sharif earlier this month, and again, we covered that on the show with his colleagues, the Reuters news agency ran a report titled, "Israel Kills Al Jazeera Journalist It Says Was Hamas Leader," which it wasn't. They chose that headline despite the fact that al-Sharif used to work for them. He was part of a Reuters team that won a 2024 Pulitzer. Instances like this caused a backlash online, but also sparked concern among some staff at the influential Global Newswire, which was founded in London in 1851 and now has a daily audience of more than 1 billion people. the biggest disseminator of propaganda worldwide. Multiple Reuters employees have spoken to Declassified about what they see as pro-Israel bias among the company's editors and management. Yeah, I would say so. All requested anonymity to avoid reprisals. Again, no surprise. Another, a desk editor, resigned around August 2024, telling colleagues in an email, quote, "Through covering what we call the Israel-Hamas war, I've realized that my values don't allow with those of the company." In the email, they also said, quote, "I've attached a report, an open letter some colleagues and I sent to management in the hopes that Reuters will uphold some basic journalistic principles, but I now recognize that senior leadership is unlikely to change, much less stop actively stifling critiques." Heather Carpenter, a senior director of communications at Reuters, declined to declassify that the company ever received this letter. Of course they did. Plausible deniability. However, a Reuters source told Declassified, quote, "A few weeks after the October 7th attack, several journalists at Reuters recognized that our coverage of the Israel-Gaza war lacked objectivity. In response, a group of journalists, while working full-time, undertook a comprehensive internal investigation, conducting both quantitative and qualitative analysis of our reporting. The findings formed the basis of an open letter, which was shared internally to identify and connect journalists within the newsroom who were committed to strengthening Reuters journalism on Gaza. Their internal study, seen by Declassified, can't deny this, analyzed 499 reports tagged as Israel-Palestine, published between October 7th and November 14th, 2023. They found, and this is going to shock you, I know, a consistent pattern of assigning more resources to covering stories affecting Israelis as opposed to Palestinians. At the time of their announcement. And remember that Israel has also murdered Reuters journalists in Lebanon. At the time of their analysis, or maybe it was Syria, over 11 or both, over 11,000 Palestinians in Gaza had been reportedly killed, around 10 times the number of Israeli fatalities. The latest
a lot of stuff happens that the news won't tell you.
And that they knew that they were innocent civilians. The latest death toll as per the Gaza Ministry of Health is nearly 62,000. The actual numbers are expected to be about 3 times higher, at least. They further question why Reuters had not reported more on claims by experts that Israel was committing genocide in Gaza, contrasting it with how the Newswire approached such allegations about Russia's conduct in Ukraine. Its authors also complained that one clear-cut example of how our wording implies bias is in our choice to prohibit the use of the word Palestine. While Palestine might not be recognized as a state in some Western countries, we don't need to pretend that it's not a real place. Reuters management did not respond to Declassified's questions about whether any recommendations from the internal study had been accepted. Why does that not surprise me? Again, here is some of the stuff that they had recommended. Right? By May of this year, however, there were some signs of changes to the style guide, which reflected the earlier internal criticism. Reuters Global News Desk's editor for quality and style, Howard S. Gohler, sent an email with subject Reuters style update on the conflict in the Middle East. Again, whitewashing it right there by not calling it a massacre. Nobody is firing back at Israel at this point. The update allows Reuters journalists to use the word genocide with attribution, but still limits the term Palestine for references to historic Palestine from antiquity to 1948. You can't call it occupied Palestine. Even with the looser restrictions on the term genocide, Declassified's analysis found that Reuters went on to use the word in just 14 of 300 reports on its quote-unquote Israel and Hamas at war page between June 21st and August 7th. And there it is charted out. Just how few times the word genocide is mentioned versus not mentioned out of 300 articles. not mentioned in 286 of them. Terms such as war, campaign, conflict, escalation, and assault were commonly used instead. When genocide was mentioned, it's nearly always with Israel's denial, a practice not afforded to other belligerents such as UAE-backed rapid support forces in Sudan or Russia. The double standard in the coverage of the Gaza genocide and other crimes against humanity, and it's not just Reuters, it's been New York Times and the Associated Press and the Telegraph and the Daily Wire, Daily everything, or a Daily Caller. It's been flagged by the internal staff in the above-mentioned study. Okay, Dr. Asal Rad, big fan of hers, scholar of Middle East history, known as the headline fixer on social media, told Declassified, quote, the pattern you note is essentially genocide denial. She added that Reuters frames Israel's atrocities in Gaza as part of an ongoing war military campaign, rather than calling it a genocide, despite the consensus among human rights experts and international institutions that have concluded Israel is committing a genocide. But yet, these are the descriptions. Usually they call it war or military campaign. The email quoted sections of from the style guide titled Gaza War 2023 to present and broader context, which provide details primarily from Israel's perspective. Go figure. The updated sections seen by Declassified do not mention crucial details such as the role of the U.S. and Israel in sabotaging ceasefire negotiations. They completely omit Israel's illegal settler colonialism and apartheid and significantly underreport on the extent of destruction in Palestine. For example, the May 27th handbook update fails to cite the Lancet's findings that it's not implausible to estimate that up to 186,000 or even more deaths could be attributable to the current conflict in Gaza. Right? The update also neglects the fact that Gaza has become the deadliest conflict zone for journalists since the U.S. Civil War in 1861, over 230 of them so far. Last year in August, former UN human rights lawyer Craig Mockber wrote for Mondoweiss after he resigned from the UN over this, quote, it's simply not credible to suggest that Western media companies are not aware of the realities on the ground and of what they're doing to obscure them. They have indisputably made conscious choices to hide the genocide from their audiences, to systematically dehumanize the Palestinian victims, and to insulate the Israeli perpetrators from accountability. Why? More recently, in May, writing for Haaretz, Israeli journalist Gideon Levy said, quote, a courageous, decent media scene could have prevented this military operation, but we barely have anything like that. A Reuters spokesperson told Declassified they believe their coverage has been fair and impartial, in keeping with the Thomson Reuters trust principles. As long as that means defense of Israel, sure. All right. As in many newsrooms, our coverage of the war has come under close scrutiny, including by our own journalists, and we've faced feedback from multiple places. Sounds like a lot of bullshit to me. So fuck Israel, fuck Reuters and the newswire services, Reuters and the Associated Press, corporate media that republishes this nonsense uncritically and without edit on a regular basis. I have been calling this out for years. These wire services push CIA and State Department propaganda almost daily. And it's the fastest way for propaganda to be pushed globally across every major media outlet that most people consider to be credible. We know for a fact that they are not credible and that they've been taken over and serve corporate interests and the wealthy, but most people have not figured that out yet. All right. Fuck Israel again. Cunts. I don't know what we're up to, Kieran, but the cunt counter should be up there. So we're not going to get remonetized by YouTube for that. It's almost 11:30. Wow. Been ranting for an hour and a half about Ukraine and just Israel. We still have the crap that's going on in London, people getting arrested. All right. And then we can talk about Venezuela. Venezuela is a long segment. Again, I may want to come back tomorrow night. If you're able to, and it means, please fund the media you want to see. The ways to do that are with Cash App, $ Indie News Network, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, at paypal.me/Indie News Network, over at IndieNewsNow.com, where you can click on Keep the Media Free. And then we've got the IndieMediaToday.com Substack, where we're still live right now. Hi to everybody over there. Aaron Paul Against Genocide. How are you, man? Thanks for subscribing. Free subscriber over there. We really appreciate those too. Go follow Aaron Paul Against Genocide over on Substack. Also at IndieNewsNow.com. That's for the network. So by all means, go check that out. Go sign up and go connect with everyone that supports fuck Israel, that movement for sure. Love you all. Thank you so much for everybody who's here tonight. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. I truly believe that. And we'll see you soon. I love you all. Have a great night, everyone.
We are out of here. Mwah. Ciao, baby.
No! We just fucking lost the stream!
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want?